Welcome everybody. We're already live. I thought I still have a couple of seconds. Welcome everybody to day 2 of the virtual show, our live stream days here, which is happening at the same time that the original NAB was supposed to happen. I'm very happy to welcome all of you here, and I'm happy to welcome on the other side of the line my partner in crime, Johnny in Tokyo.
And we are very happy to have very nice guests today. But of course, we'll introduce everybody.
We also have Dan Chung from Atomos here.
Thank you for having me here.
Hello, Dan. Where you're in London right now, right?
Oh, I'm in London right now. Yeah.
Okay.
We also locked down in London.
Like we all are locked down. That's why we're doing this over video chat. And we also have Chris from Warsaw.
Hello, everyone. Yes.
Okay. Hi, Chris. I think we haven't seen you. Maybe you can just say you said you filmed something with the Panasonic S1H and the Atomos Ninja V for the launch film. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. That's true. We've been asked to do that on unreleased firmware from Panasonic and Atomos, and we were working with the S1H and Atomos Ninja V. And I will try to share my experience with that equipment.
Very cool. Before we look at your film, actually, I'll ask Dan to just mention or explain to our audience what this whole update was all about that was announced last night.
Yeah, so Atomos announced a upcoming firmware update. It's not available just yet, but on the 25th of May, or by the 25th of May from the Atomos side, there will be new firmware that allows the S1H to output 5.9K full frame ProRes RAW to the Ninja V, which will then record it in either ProRes RAW or ProRes RAW HQ. And that then makes it an extremely powerful, we believe, filmmaking device. It's already a great camera as it is, and then you add this capability, and it does a whole lot more. In addition to that, it's also got a 4K 5994 Super 35 mode. So if you want to do a bit of 5994, you can do, or 50. And then it's also got the new 4x3 3.5K, get all my Ks right, anamorphic mode, which is a Super 35 anamorphic mode. It's not too dissimilar in frame size to what you might be used to on the Alexa Mini. Slight difference, but not massive. And the lenses that would be anamorphic lenses that cover an Alexa Mini would also work with this setup in 3.5K ProRes RAW, which is pretty nice. And then in addition to that, this still remains a great camera just to shoot regular ProRes on. So you'll be able to do that as well. So what we're really happy about is that if you went for this setup, that you'll have a whole range of codec choices from internal all the way through regular ProRes, all the way up to ProRes RAW. And then the best part about this whole setup from the Atomos side, and actually from the Panasonic side as well, is that we're not going to charge any extra to users who've already got the kit to get the upgrade. So that will be free at the end of May.
Okay, we already have the first user question on Facebook or YouTube. Jonathan David Piercy asks, will the EVA 1 also be able to do this via HDMI?
I don't believe so. I can't speak to Panasonic entirely, but there are very clear output signal chains for these cameras. If they have SDI, it usually makes more sense for the RAW to go out of SDI. I mean, that just seems to be the pattern across most of the cinema cameras. So I don't know of a cinema camera that does HDMI RAW output. They tend to use SDI because it's there.
Okay, I mean, you guys have already announced the RAW recording capability of the Ninja V for a number of other cameras that are already in the market. Which cameras are capable, which small mirrorless cameras are now capable of outputting RAW?
At the moment, it's just the Nikon or Nikon, depending where you are right now, Z6 or Z6 and Z7 or Z7. So that was the first camera to get it. It certainly won't be the last mirrorless camera to get it. And then obviously S1H is the next, and watch this space for new cameras to be added in not too far away, we don't think. But yeah, right now that's your choice, and yeah, this is the highest resolution option. The Nikon is a really good option as well if you want full frame 4K, but this obviously pushes the K values up if that's what you're after.
But it's interesting that the Panasonic update is free, and the one for the Nikon actually costs, I think, $200. So
yeah, I mean, you'll have to ask Nikon and Panasonic about that one. All I can say is it seems quite a generous offer on terms from Atomos that we're giving it away for free, regardless of whichever camera that you have. So yeah,
it is an amazing capability. Johnny, you've already shot with the Z6 and this setup. Is that right?
That's true. I shot with this. I worked with this a little bit. Together, after analyzing the footage, we thought it's really nice, and it has a lot of potential out there to be a valid, really valid tool, especially for the price of the camera and the Ninja 5 together. There were some obstacles, something that I'm not used to work. For example, I still need my viewfinder when I'm working outside. That's something that I would prefer personally, and not only rely on a external monitor, which the Nikon cannot offer for now, and the S1H can offer. For example,
I was going to say, you can't really see, but it's not swapping. But you'll be pleased to know that this setup allows you to do exactly that. So
exactly.
You can actually do that if you wanted to do that instead of that. Right. That's your choice.
So I think all in all, this is a more flexible way of working. I mean, I don't have to kind of compromise the way that I personally work if I will work with the S1H. But again, it doesn't mean that the Z6 or Z7 is not good. It's just a matter of preferences. Yeah, for some people, maybe it's a bit easier to work a bit different. For me, I need a viewfinder.
All right, we already have another question for you, Dan. Malcolm John West is asking, is it just the Ninja 5 and not the Ninja Inferno that will have the 6K capability?
5.9K, and at present, yes, it is just the Ninja 5. We hope to bring it to other recorders, but as well, I mean, there are several things. Number one, it does take time to put this on. We clearly have looked at who is most likely to use which recorder with which camera for it to be the first. That's not saying that it's not going to be the only one, but in all likelihood, it will stay on the Ninja 5, and perhaps the current lineup will get the upgrade. I just can't say for sure. And to be honest, the current situation that we're all facing is clearly putting a strain on a lot of engineering companies all over the world right now. So anything that we might have had in the works, might not be just a little bit perhaps later than we might have wanted it to be. So apologies if you're hanging on waiting for something, but maybe is all I can say. Shogun 7, quite likely, but again, depends on engineering and when we can get this thing. And the other thing is it's a two-part thing. So we could do everything we wanted on our monitor recorder, but it has to talk to whichever camera that you're working with. And whilst they may look the same, whether they're similar, there are still subtle differences. So there's a whole QA process that we have to go through with each vendor, with each combination. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, it's just like certain lenses not working with certain cameras. You can't be sure unless you test everything, and it requires two to tango. So, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's what we do at Atomos, is we are working really closely with Panasonic, with Nikon, with Sony on bringing these things together. If we launch a solution, it's because we've worked together on it. It's not like just Atomos on our own, or here's the plan from Panasonic, off you go, we'll see you in 6 months, come back with a working thing. It's not like that at all. It's a very collaborative process where we agree from the outset what we're trying to do. We have a set of quality criteria. If the resulting combination hits that criteria, then we release it. And that's I mean, joining you in Japan, you can probably relate to this way of working, which is perhaps a bit different to the normal way of working.
Absolutely. Everything is structured. And Jeremy, who, of course, everybody knows him too, as the head of Atomos, he spent many, many years in Japan, and he also speaks the language. So obviously, he is working with the Japanese manufacturers in a Japanese way. So, yeah.
Guys, we have a few more questions. I think I know the answer to the next one, but I'm still going to ask them to you, Dan. So Honji Wu, I hope I say the name right. Will Atomos think about releasing something like a Ninja Star 4K? Ninja 5 is great, but we sometimes want to minimize the package as much as possible.
We'll think about all sorts of things. Whether we make them or not is, I can't really comment on the future roadmap, I'm afraid. All I can tell you is that the Ninja 5 is a great product. It's here, it's now, and it's even cheaper than ever before. So right now, it's, yeah, go ahead.
You should answer the Japanese way. We will consider.
We will consider, yes. We will absolutely consider. We are always considering new products. But, I cannot promise anything at this stage.
Of course. Malcolm is also asking another question, which is a good one. Will the 4K 60p recording resolution on the Ninja 5 be UHD or DCI?
So in video, so the current, if you buy it right now and use it without the firmware update, it is DCI 4K, I believe. And I believe the crop Super 35 is DCI 4K as well, but I might have to defer to Panasonic to double check that. Don't take that as gospel. I know that the raw Super 35 is DCI. In fact, you know what? I could even go into it's sitting right in front of me. If I could remember how to turn it around, there you go.
Well, in the meantime, I can ask Chris something about his film. So, Chris, before we actually start watching your film, is there anything you want to say to introduce it?
Our cooperation with Atomos began with the movie I made in 2019. It's called Born for the Saber, and it was a docudrama. It was a docudrama made on a GH5. So before I had some experience with these little cameras, and I really loved GH5. So for a long time I was working with that cameras, and that was also a reason why I choose them for making that movie. And it was some kind of a breaking point because it was bought by and licensed by History Channel. It was displayed broadcasted in 35 countries of Europe and Asia. And it was began of my cooperation with Dan and with Atomos. Okay,
great. In the meantime, Dan, do you have an answer to the question you were looking for?
Yes. So in RAW, it is definitely DCI. It says 17:9. It's 4128 by 2176 at 5994. There you go. So and that's the Super 35 crop for that. And for those, there's been other questions asked online about why it is not 4K full frame, and then if it's RAW and it's the 6K sensor, if you want the absolute best quality, then in theory it should be 6K full frame, and then therefore the crop becomes 4K. The math of that is pretty straightforward, I think.
All right, last question before we actually move on to finally watching Chris's film. Graham, our team member Graham, is asking, does the Ninja 5 have support for the Sigma FP?
It does in video at the moment. In terms of ProRes RAW, I can't comment. So,
all right, you will consider. Okay, let's move on. You will consider. Let's move on to the film. It's called Blind Love by Chris. Let's just roll that clip, and after that, we'll talk with Chris about the film and what we've seen.
Yeah.
Guys, we're back on. We're back on now. All right, very nice film, Chris. What can you tell us about the background of the story? How did you end up making this film?
Yeah, it was a lot of difficulties with doing that especially because of the coronavirus. So it was a very special time for producing content like this. And just like 3 days later, they locked down all the productions in the country. So we were lucky that we actually managed to do this short movie. But yeah, it was my first time with working on 5.9K. It was my first time working with ProRes RAW, so everything was a bit new to me. But in the end, I was absolutely blown away with the performance of the camera and of the recorder. And I was really impressed with what you can get from this setup.
Johnny, you also had a couple of questions for Chris.
Was it you also playing as an actor? Because somehow the actor and you look quite the same.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I have a twin brother who's also a member of our team, and he was acting actually this time. I was behind the camera with my friends, but I also used to acting. But you can be everywhere. You can actually be everywhere. But in this particular production, I was behind the camera and he was acting because our background comes from the stunt work. I began my career as a stuntman and swordsman working on some major Polish production. We were doing a Battle of Warsaw 1920. The director of that was Jerzy Hoffman, and the DOP of that movie was Oscar-winning Sławomir Idziak. So that was the one movie I was working on. I was working on Karbala, so the also Polish movie about war in Iraq, directed by Krzysztof Łukaszewicz. And I was also working in some Russian movies. So this stunt and swordsman was absolutely my background and the beginning of my story with filmmaking. But if I would say something about professional work as a filmmaker, that I would say that it started in 2015, because then I started my first company. and it was growing year by year. And right now, I try to concentrate on producing and the filming as well. Like I already said, the breaking point was releasing Born for the Saber in 2019 and getting that contract with History Channel. And then you know the story because I already mentioned that before. So that was that breaking point, and because of that, right now we can work with Atomos and Panasonic.
Chris, what lens did you use in this? I'm interested to know.
In blind low, we used the lens that I have here. So it's a Nikon AIS 85 millimeters 1.4, and it's a vintage lens. And we used only two lenses. It was that 85 millimeters Nikon, and we used also a 50 millimeters Nikon 1.9, also a vintage one. I really like, vintage lenses because they have a different character. They are not, I would say they have a different contrast. They are not that plastic in some way. And I really like this old school look. Maybe because I'm used to, the movies from the 80s, 90s, and I love this way of how the picture looked in that movies in the past. So this kind of my taste, and I always look for something like that. And it's also because I like to work with affordable gear. I didn't have a chance before to work with big setups with a big camera. Yeah, and this is what I'm looking for. This is how I like to work, because what is the biggest advantage of working with a gear like this? That is a very lightweight. You can take it everywhere. You can do a lot of angles in the less amount of time, because you don't need to move the dolly. You don't need to set up the crane. And I think it's a big advantage of working with this kind of setups, and because of the mobility. Mobility is absolutely crucial for my work, and I would say it's some way of filming I prefer, and I think that it's something I really will move on with. I mean, even if I will have a chance to switch to bigger cameras, I would say that we and our crew will stay with this kind of hybrid cameras. And also because the capability of taking still pictures, which even during the shooting day, when in the moments when you are waiting until someone will, when the actors are ready, or where you're waiting for the technical crew or something is going on, you can always just switch with one click to the photo mode and do a lot of promotional pictures that you can use later on in the promotional process.
Malcolm from our audience is asking what ISO you were shooting on mostly.
We went from 400, as I remember, because that's the first native amount.
Yeah.
So we
started with
400, and then we went up far to 6,400, I think, during that production.
640 is the first native on the RAW. That's what it is. It's 640, and then it goes up from there.
So it was 640 for sure, and then we went up to 6,400, I think. And I gotta tell you, some of the shots that are included in this short movie were made literally just after the sunset. So the low light capabilities of the camera are, from my perspective, absolutely insane. I thought that I will never include some of the shots that we actually included in the video in the final version, but it was absolutely possible to get that quality out from the footage.
I think it was quite interesting. There was somebody commenting on the video. I think below, if you look at the actual video, there's somebody saying, he's moaning that basically, it just looks like every other, Hollywood look kind of movie. It's a bit desaturated and that. But I think the point that Chris will tell you is that this is actually shot in all these different lighting scenarios, like full, sun out, cloud, and dark and light. And it's just all graded together, so it does look continuous, which is the whole point of a raw workflow anyway. That's what it's giving you the flexibility to do.
Yeah, that's true. It was windy, it was cloudy, it was sunny, it was changing all the time, and we finished about the first location we finished about 6 in the evening, something around 6 in the evening, and then we moved on to another location where was the interior, so the beginning scene from the short movie, and we did that already at the midnight. I think that it was somewhere close to midnight, and we used artificial lights, and that's where the first scene come from. It was already after the sunset, about the midnight, and it was all artificial. And in the first part, in the second part of the movie, so this deadly chase, we were using basically a natural light, and we were just reflecting the sun in some scenes.
Chris, what was the main advantage for you to work in this setup when it comes to raw recording?
The biggest advantage, I would say, dynamic range. Absolutely, dynamic range. It's something that I was really impressed with. And it's funny because right now we're talking about the cinema or filmic performance of the hybrid camera. Before we were doing that with GH5, with some Sony cameras, with some Nikon cameras, and so on. But right now we have a pretty serious talk about using cameras like this, which few years ago was absolutely unbelievable. So even that fact can tell you that this is something something that is a very good quality.
The one thing we should say, when we say it's got, we're talking about dynamic range. The dynamic range of the sensor, as you guys know with your testing, is the dynamic range of the sensor, whether that's in RAW or video. What we're talking about is the appearance and the amount of data and the flexibility of the top end and the bottom end. So as you approach max, as you approach the highlights and into the shadows, what is it like to work with that? So when Chris says it's about dynamic range, it's not like, oh, it suddenly went from, whatever, 14 stops to 32 stops. It's not like it's more stops. It's what do those stops that the sensor is capable of actually look like, and how can you manipulate them? Really, really close to the.
I would also mention the working with the color, because you can get 12-bit from that. It's not even a 10-bit. The signal is 12-bit, and it's visible in the post-production. You can push the sliders, each way, and it handles very well. So maybe it's not visible in this particular movie because, like Dan said, it's pretty desaturated, so it's not that visible. But when we were trying different things, you could really get thousands of possibilities from the color.
All right, guys, very, very interesting. I think we should definitely continue this conversation at some point, but I want to move over now to actually reminding people that we have a filmmaking competition running. It's called Bored at Home Filmmaking Competition, and you're invited to make a 60-second short film about the topic being bored at home, and in whatever creative way you can. The top prize is actually a Panasonic S1H, which is why I'm mentioning it here. Yeah, and I think, Dan, you want to add something to that?
And I think, because of our announcement, which, I think everybody at Atomos is very proud of, and I hope everybody at Panasonic is proud of too, we would like to add a Ninja V to the prize pot. So whoever gets the S1H, the lucky winner, will also get a Ninja V, and hopefully can find out for themselves, him or herself, exactly what Chris is talking about. I think that's... and for those of you who don't win, I'll do the little commercial plug. We do have amazing special offers. We're calling it the lockdown price down promotion at the moment, where you can buy the Ninja V for just $499 US, plus with the local taxes you've got to pay. And we are giving them away as well on Atomos, our new academy, atomosacademy.com, which is our online replacement for NAB, where we have the equivalent of our stage presentations. And if you come and watch, you can also enter the equivalent of our online prize draw. So every day we're giving away Ninja V or Shogun 7 or Sumo 19, just as if you were in Las Vegas. So sorry for the little plug there, guys, but that's what we're doing. So
that's fine. It's very, very generous that you're adding these to our prize pot. So if I'm not sure everybody got this right, but if you win the board at home filmmaking competition on cinema5D, if you are the top winner, you will not only get the Panasonic S1H, which is worth $4,000, but you will also get a Ninja 5 to go with it, which means that you will be able to record RAW straight out of your new camera. That will be the top prize. The submissions are still open for another 8 days until April 30th. Second prize are also Blackmagic designed DaVinci Resolve 16 Studio, of course. That is for the runner-up. Second runner-up prize is a annual subscription to MZ Pro Premium. That is the biggest package that they have. MZ provides amazing education for creatives and has really, really cool online workshops for filmmakers, especially in times like these when you're stuck at home. There's a lot of time to educate yourself. And last but not least, there's also a pro standard annual subscription of Musicvine included. Musicvine provides stock music for filmmakers. And let's now wrap this up here. Thank you guys for being part of this talk. And now we're gonna see the trailer for our board at home filmmaking competition. And right after that, we're gonna show 2 submissions. We've already received a lot of submissions. We've just selected 2 randomly, just to give you an idea what your film could be all about. Now, we have to be clear that the 2 that we are showing doesn't mean that they win or anything. It's just, we just want to show them so you can understand what kind of film you could make. But your creativity is boundless. You can do whatever you want as long as it's within the terms and conditions that are posted on our page. But let's run the trailer and 2 example films, and come back after that. Are you bored? Are you forced to spend way too much time at home right now? What is your strategy to deal with the situation? Are you getting creative in your home office? Staying in touch with your loved ones? Are you finding new routines? Are you rediscovering your craftsmanship? And how are you keeping your spirits up? Tell us, show us in the Cinema5D Board at Home Filmmaking Competition. Make a 60-second short that inspires us, makes us laugh, makes us cry. Really up to you. We will judge and comment on all eligible entries. As a top prize, you can win a brand new Panasonic Lumix S1H full-frame mirrorless camera. You can also win a license of Blackmagic designed DaVinci Resolve Studio, a full year subscription of MZ Pro Premium online workshops, or a full year of great stock music with Musicvine's Pro Standard subscription. You can take part now until April 30th. Details in the link below.
Cinema5D Board at Home Film Competition is sponsored by Panasonic, Blackmagic Design, MZ, and Musicvine.
Jack.
Cinema5D Board at Home Film Competition is sponsored by Panasonic, Blackmagic Design, MZ, and Musicvine.
saat geride kaldı değerli izleyiciler ve tabii ki bugün özellikle
Live. Hi guys, now we are back here, moving on to the next subject. We are on the line with Phil Holland in Los Angeles, but before I introduce Phil, who is a cinematographer, let's just run a clip that he shot. Actually, that is aerials of Los Angeles that he shot before. You might have seen this, and we will talk about where you might have seen it afterwards.
8K. It was actually the first.
Thank you, Phil. We just saw an amazing clip over Los Angeles here. While we were watching your clip, we were already talking about it. So you mentioned you do a lot of aerial work. What kind of? Well, first of all, hello to Phil, because the audience hasn't seen you. How are you?
Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone, and it's good to see you guys. I was actually just reminded on Instagram of a thing we did at NAB, I think 4 years ago, where Johnny was on the panel, and I was looking at the photo. I was like, oh, I wish we were in Vegas talking technology and, doing the whole thing.
Exactly. At this, I mean, literally at this time, we would sit right there. It would be the third day actually of NAB, and we'll probably be on a panel. But yeah, it's good to have this. It's good to do it like that. And that's the idea behind our virtual show, and a lot of other initiatives by other companies. But Phil, I mean, we talked over your film a little bit while we were seeing it. So you've done a lot of aerial work for Apple TV as well. Like my girlfriend and I, we have an Apple TV that we use every day for Netflix and all kind of stuff. So, and every time the screensaver comes on, I'm amazed by these aerials there. What can you tell us about this production?
It's been an interesting journey. Aerial cinematography happened for me as sort of a accident in the 2000s, and somewhere around 2012 it started escalating because people were looking to do new things with aerial cinematography. The Apple Aerial TV project is really a project of a lifetime. Very rarely do I ever get the opportunity to explore a location for so many days and hours in a helicopter. For those who are not very familiar with that, we're producing long form aerial takes. And it's very similar to the work I've been doing for LG, Samsung, TCL, and various other television companies. I've been doing a lot of really high-end visuals, specializing in high-resolution cinematography, and sometimes even stitching cameras together and doing wacky things like that to really explore the unknown and produce visuals that hopefully cause people to look at them and enjoy them and have a high level of rewatchability. You were just saying that you enjoy seeing some of those clips and you can find little moments in them that are new every time, and that's sort of the thing I'm trying for when I do long form work like that. So yeah.
Why do you think, I mean, why does it make sense to do this in a helicopter as opposed to drones? I mean, drones are everywhere now. Of course, everybody has access to them. Where's the advantage of doing that with a helicopter?
Different world. I still occasionally will use drones, but they're incredibly different filming platforms. I think first and foremost, you have to think about the cameras we're using and the payloads we're dealing with, sometimes over 270 pounds of camera equipment. But when you're in the helicopter, you're quite literally working with a pilot, and it's very much like a production set on the ground, like if you were controlling a camera dolly and a jib or a crane. And it's much more efficient. I can get quite a bit more material with a helicopter in 2.5 hours than with a drone. But sometimes there's locations where I want to be much closer to objects, maybe chasing cars very closely, maybe under a low overpass or something like that, where a drone's much more appropriate. But the helicopter's special, and everything you guys see from me, there is no post-stabilization. It's the only visual effects work done ever to any of my work really tends to be painting out billboards and stuff, which is both like a commercial concept to, not advertise other people's products, but also to kind of remove a timestamp from something. So the pieces actually can last for a very long time. Yeah.
Phil, we kind of jumped straight into your work, but just that people will get to know you a little bit better. How did you start? In a nutshell, just tell us a little bit about your start, because we want to inspire people.
Oh, wow. very short, abridged story. I started working in the motion picture industry in the 90s. I hopped onto a production set and got paid petty cash to grip and gaff for a film called Magnolia, which some of you might have seen. And I worked on a few other things.
One of my favorite movies.
weird time. And I was really trying to explore breaking into the industry for about 2 years. And I had some stage theatrical lighting experience. I was very good with computers. There was a studio called Rhythm and Hues that I kind of refer to as my real big break, because I worked at the studio for 11 and a half years. And man, I need to do a full interview on the times. To put some perspective in things, when I started at that studio, color correction was done with a notepad, a calculator, a command line on a Unix system. There was no DaVinci Resolve. There was no iPhone yet. So through working with the studio and learning how to program and stuff, I ended up making our color correction pipeline. I was involved with high resolution scanning and recording early on. In fact, my manager at the studio was the co-inventor of the first 4K film scanner in the 90s that won the Technical Academy Award. So I started actually in 4K a good decade before most people did, maybe a little bit longer. So it was kind of a natural transition for me for the higher resolution stuff. And I always kind of understood the relevance to the film format and resolution, and kind of demanding, I was working on feature films, so the quality bar was quite high at all times. But yeah, I worked at Rhythm and Hues for a long time, and then while working there, I had a freelance career doing everything you can imagine, and I started shooting more on sets, developing pipelines, doing freelance for other studios. I worked on 100 films by the time I was probably 26 or 27. And yeah, I moved on from there when I turned 30, I think. And then I went out and became a full-time director in DP because that time came. I was shooting quite a bit more. First year was very scary. I remember that being quite the endeavor. I had a mortgage and a car payment, and just going out on your own out of nowhere is a daunting experience. But my clients were the same clients I was working for, Warner Brothers and Universal and Fox. And eventually all the tech companies started coming after me because they were looking for someone who had a deep understanding of creating very high quality footage, sort of bleeding edge visuals, bleeding edge technology. And that's kind of what I've been doing since. Occasionally working on films less these days, mostly doing spot visual effects shoots when things are needed from me. Plate photography, sometimes with a helicopter, sometimes without. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. There doesn't seem to be any sort of pattern to my career at the moment. Yeah.
What do you make of the most recent announcements? I mean, you said that you have been connected to the high resolution part of the game for much longer than anybody else. And I mean, this craziness over 4K, 6K, 8K has really only become mainstream in technology and camera technology in the last few years. What do you make of the latest announcements?
I'm actually extremely excited. I think this is a really good time to be involved in the motion picture industry. We have access to tools that are amazing. And, with the recent Canon announcements, I was just looking at my Canon 5DS this morning, and just, it's been beaten up. It's traveled the world with me 5 times, and it's been my little stills camera when I'm going out to places. I've been working in 8K since 2015 or 16, and it's been a joy, both in the exploration of larger formats like digital VistaVision. And I think once people get familiar with that potential, I think there's just a lot of joy to be had there on a creative level. we were referencing NAB, and we all were going to NAB during a time where a lot of people were saying that 4K would never catch on. And I don't even think that's a question at this point. I mean, almost no camera company even makes a sub 4K camera anymore, really. The industry is moving, and we're getting better, and we're gaining the abilities to create higher quality visuals. We're also in a position where we can deliver higher quality visuals to the audience through streaming. You know, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done there with bit rates and things like that. Long, nerdy conversation if you really want to go that route. But, you know, 8K TVs now are what, $3,500 for the cheapest model? You know, things are getting there.
Phil, one of the companies that actually was really pushing the envelope at the old days, and still now, was Red. And you're very, very close to Red in some ways. Is there anything that you're testing right now and you can share with us some insight?
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to look at Komodo. You know, I think it kind of hit me from left field that such a camera was coming out of Red. If I had to simplify my surprise, you know, when I first saw it, it's very small and very lightweight. And what shocked me even more is it's an all-inclusive body. It doesn't require a battery mount or a module. It doesn't require some sort of lens mount module. You can adapt lenses to it, but it's pretty much out of the box a camera that you just add batteries, media, and a lens, and you can film something. That's kind of a first for Red, and kind of a first for a company primarily focused on digital cinema coming into this space. So, you know, the things we know about Komodo that I can talk about, which are also pretty cool, you know, it's got a global shutter, which is really handy for a camera in that form factor. I've been kind of referring to it mainly as a utility camera on set. I think plenty of people will find ways to use it as an A-cam. But I was just watching behind the scenes on the last Mission Impossible movie where somebody strapped a Red DSMC-2 Dragon to their helmet as Tom Cruise jumped out of the plane. And I was thinking, well, that would be a perfect situation for Komodo, because instead of having I mean, that thing had to be 20 pounds plus on that guy's head. They could have probably had it down to like 6 pounds with a full rig like that. So. And I'm excited because it's also using the RF mount, which is a growing ecosystem of lenses. It's funny because there's a lot of confusion about these different mounts and things, but you know, more or less all we're talking about is shorter flange distances, the ability to make smaller lenses and to have smaller cameras. And you can still use your EF glass, your PL glass, or whatever you want to adapt to it. But I'm excited. You know, it's going to be fun to explore it whenever the world starts spinning and we start seeing some of these new cameras hitting market. I'm super excited about the R5 because I'm pretty much always have a Canon and a Red camera on me. I kind of prefer to shoot motion pictures on Red cameras. You know, the Monstros, my favorite sensor, so by a good margin. And yeah.
Phil, let's move on to actually something that caught our attention on Facebook. You're somebody who's sharing long, thoughtful things on Facebook. That's kind of unique about your Facebook presence, I would say. And one of those things you shared a couple of weeks ago was the fact that some of your content was stolen by, you know, a big company, or actually the government, if I recall correctly.
No, not exactly that, but I'll explain the situation. Yeah.
Please.
It's kind of interesting because I didn't really find out about it until the creator of the content called me to potentially ask to use the material. A small production company in New York, who apparently has an office in California somewhere, ended up making a montage project with Governor Cuomo's words. It was very uplifting. The project itself was very good in intention, but almost every shot in the piece, it was a 2-minute long video, was used from other productions, other content creators, without anybody getting asked. In my specific case, the 4 clips that they used from me, they actually cropped out my watermark. You'll notice that, the stuff that I post up on YouTube is like 2% of my motion picture work. And everything I put online, I have to watermark because this has become, such a big issue. It's actually kind of nice being in the YouTube ecosystem because they do actually care quite a bit about the copyright. And if they detect that people are using your footage, they can take it down. In this particular thing, the video went viral. The governor, took notice of it. Apparently, the production company sent out an emailer and said, hey, download it to your Instagram, share it. I've since been made aware of all of those things. And, obviously celebrities got a hold of it because the project was a good idea. But in retrospect, none of the original creators were credited. And by the time it got up to about 2 million views, about 4 days in, it was kind of in a mysterious realm of, wow, so what does everyone do? I had a heart-to-heart with the owner of the production company, and they took down the original content, made a new edit of stuff that they had and some stock footage, and they got permission to use some of the other footage. They have since credited those creators on their website and things like that, but the damage has already been done because they've already got work because of the original project. And if that was a project produced by a small production company in New York, and there wasn't footage from Fox and Disney in there as well, I mean, it looked like a $5 million shoot, basically. And that's because there were clips from multi-million-dollar productions in the thing. So, yeah, I mean, copyright infringement's a big sensitive subject these days. And, I think it's something that content creators have to be really on top of. I get requests to use my footage probably between 3 to 10 times a week. And some things are available for licensing and things like that. But, most of the time, my content's owned by other people or shot for other people. And, when a small production company steals footage that's owned by a much larger company that they may be looking for as a client, that's a bad way to be. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's very different if it was like a teenager or something who uploaded something to YouTube and put their like cool little acoustic music track on it that they made in the backyard. But this was an actual commercial production studio. So it hit me, the professional courtesy, right? In this industry, like you don't do that typically. I was able to recognize other people's footage. When you get into a high level of visibility, you can identify people's clips pretty easily. And, it's a little bit of a heartbreaker. We put a lot of effort into these things. In my case, the footage they use, technology I invented, and yeah, no credit. They crop out my watermark. It hurts.
Yeah, I mean, some of yours, the aerial stuff and other stuff, like visual stuff, is easy for people to steal, I guess, because they can just use it in any way possible in their productions. They think, although they don't own the license. But have you found a way of actually being able to track this? Because you were hearing from a lot of people who are shooting and putting stuff online that they have this problem. We've had it happen before to our productions as well, where stuff ends up somewhere, and you get the feeling that the times you actually realize that it's used in something in an unauthorized way, that there's probably 10 or 50 times more where you don't actually know where it's being used.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I've obviously put clips and stuff online for people to use to practice color grading on or testing out their editing workflow. I've seen those end up in commercial reels somehow. It's just so strange, and it's made me sometimes question when I want to contribute to the community in those ways. But at the same time, if I'm sharing a clip like that for public use, I know what comes with it really at this point. In terms of my personal experience, the best I can say is at a minimum watermark your footage, because if you ever have to go to any sort of legal levels outside of a cease and desist, it shows negligence that they've done something, and the fines that could be tied to that are actually quite high. And it's actually a quite serious offense. But you know, when it's a movie clip that ends up on YouTube and it's just repurposed in some weird way, you know, I'm imagining the large studios have to pick and choose their battles on, you know, fining that individual, you know, $160,000 or $600,000 and going to the legal expense. But yeah, I would say watermark your footage. I think YouTube does a good job of tracking copyright infringement. So if it's copied and shared on that platform, they have algorithms that detect that. Vimeo's kind of lacking in those areas, but not dogging Vimeo. I'm sure they're going to come up with some really cool solutions to this too. So,
but are you actually able to use that as an independent filmmaker? I mean, we regularly have the problem these days. We're doing a lot of interviews with amazing directors of photography and filmmakers like yourself, a lot of pre-recorded stuff as well. And right now we actually, you know, like we have a finished interview in the can, which contains footage by the BBC. And we got permission from the BBC to actually use it within that interview, but we upload the clip in private on YouTube, you know, preparing the content, and it automatically gets flagged, and basically it's not even possible to put it online anymore, even though we have the permission. Then you can dispute it and so on. But you know, like the whole dispute process takes so long. It's quite strange. You know, the stuff by big corporations is flagged automatically. So what could I do if I shoot something as an independent content creator, or like yourself, if it's, you know, something that was not contracted by another company? So you're shooting something, you're putting it up online. Can you actually register it with YouTube so it, you know, it's automatically flagged if somebody else uses it? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, once you're a partner creator, I mean, you have to get to a certain point and, you know, prove who you are. You just described like all the good things that's actually there. Like, you do want to have a little bit of red tape to find out if you can actually use the material or not. I remember a couple pieces where we spent quite a bit of money licensing some music, and they came after me, and all I had to do was forward them a document that said I had the right to use the music, and, you know, life was good. It's just not as transparent sometimes. You know, if you go out and you license a really cool Hans Zimmer track, and you actually pay for it, and you have all the permission, they're still going to flag it because it's known music, right? But you just have to go through that process. This is a less of an issue when it comes to producing work for, say, a Netflix or a Hulu or Apple TV Plus or something like that, because there's usually other levels to that. And in those ecosystems, it's very clear and actually much harder to steal the footage, honestly. But even still, every now and again, I hear of a production that used some B-roll that they snipped off the internet. It's happened to me a couple times where they took some clip of mine, strangely from YouTube, because I upload high-res material there, and they can crop in and do whatever they want with it. So it's a little problematic there.
One of the issues that we had as cinema5D, we conduct a lot of camera reviews. And at some point, we will find our reviews shared by online shop owners as a way to push the product. Doesn't matter which camera right now, but they use the clip as, look at the camera, what it can do. The good thing that we do have a community, and many times we are getting alerts from guys all over the place saying, "Hey, we saw your review over there. Why is it there?" But as Nino said, on every case like this, probably there are many others that we simply don't know.
Yeah, you know, it's a sticky situation, and it's one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of that type of thing. But I think in a situation where, like, let's just say an online store posted your review and credited you and had the links and everything, they would be just sharing your video. And for your purposes, you'd probably be okay with that. But it's when people are repurposing the footage that you've spent time, effort, and money producing, honestly. It's where it actually hits you professionally and personally. Like, it's punch across the chin, and it does definitely beat you down in some ways. And you just have to stay vigilant and on top of it. And you guys do stuff that gets high exposure when you get early looks on things and whatnot, and you got to be super vigilant on that, because your first look at camera X is going to turn into somebody else's first look at camera X very easily. So yeah, I don't know if there's a really beautiful way to solve that problem. I wish there was.
By the way, how this dispute or whatever you had with that company that took used your images and cropped your logo, how did this end up?
I didn't initially have a lot of anger towards the owner of the company. So we spoke on the phone personally, and at the moment I wasn't really exploring it legally, but I was also being sold sort of a swan song from him, and found out it was a much more planned out endeavor. They obviously sent out mailers and stuff. The project was on their company's website without crediting everybody. It was basically a commercial for a production company at that point. So I know right now there's some legal things happening behind the scenes from some of the other content creators. And I am happy to share the story there. We're in weird times right now. I'm not really interested in destroying someone's company or anything like that. But you steal content from 20 creators around the world, and the fines for that will put you out of business very easily. So I think we just need to find a way to handle it. They need to find a way to right the wrong, which they should have done really early on, because there's some real pissed off creators. Like, I'm pretty cool. I didn't sick lawyers on the guy initially. I talked to him on the phone, which is a very different tact. If I was a more ruthless businessman, I probably, sick the dogs on them. But I have other concerns in my life.
Phil, talking about, if we have a few more minutes, just talking about the current situation that we are all in, how do you see our industry the day after?
It's interesting. I was actually about to embark on a 4-month shoot on March 16th, and we were planning on shooting pretty much every day leading up to that, because of the nature of the shoot it was. And when we got the stay-at-home order, it kind of, it hit me. But I think proceeding forward, once things sort of gradually open up in different areas, we're going to have a probably real conversation about what production is going to be. I know one film right now that is planning on starting up kind of immediately. And what they're going to be doing is putting cast and crew in a 14-day quarantine, make sure everyone's tested, and everyone's going to be sequestered away from the public, much like you are really sometimes on certain films. And for them to get the ball rolling on that, it's a rather large budget production. They're going to basically do like movie summer camp, sleepaway camp, where everyone's kind of staying in a hotel together and being safe together. That's obviously not going to be how the entire industry responds to this. Strangely for me, this has actually not been a huge bad thing. I usually spend about a third of the year doing development and R&D and making pitch documents and things like that. So, that's kind of what I've been up to. And the rest of the year is spent filming. So I'm very eager to get back to work as much as everybody is, but we're going to do it as safe as possible. I obviously travel quite a bit for what I do, and some of those heightened concerns are going to be very interesting on a country by country basis. We'll see how that goes, because we're going to have to play by other people's rules really when we get there. Maybe they want to put you in a quarantine for a few days, test you out. Who knows? Maybe they won't allow you into the country like they're doing in some areas already. So we'll see. I just, I think we're all erring on the side of precaution right now, which I think is the best thing that we can do, because we're, if you kind of look at this like a gardening hose, like a watering hose, we're not trying to pinch the hose. We're trying to slow the flow of the water with this whole sort of sheltering in place, right? We're never gonna really stop it from spreading. And I think we're doing the right thing in terms of trying to mitigate that, because I think at this point everyone knows people who have been affected by this in some way, directly or indirectly. It's hit too many people at this point. And we have to figure out, how do we move forward as a society, basically, with things like this. And there's some really smart people who have been talking about stuff like this for a long time. I strangely have a science background, and I'm pretty tuned into this on what I think steps that we should do on a medical level from here in terms of tackling viruses like this. But those are bigger government conversations that are outside of my possible grasp. But I have ideas. I am an idea person, so yeah.
You can superimpose the phone number. Just call me with my ideas.
Oh no, it's not like that. But I think it's interesting, because this is one of those situations where you have to look at the experts and the professionals and the brilliant minds that do come up with really interesting strategies. And at the same time, there's a lot of people coming up with strategies that are, contrasting to each other. Who do you listen to and why? Right now in the United States, it's a very interesting playing field of people, obviously feeling the burn from everyone being out of work and staying at home, and you can only watch Friends so many times, right? To people really wanting to get back to work, or people just wanting to be safe. And everyone's getting antsy. Not everyone's cut out for isolation and solitude. And that's been hard for a lot of people. But we'll know more. I mean, really, in the United States, the next major landmarks in terms of decision making are the end of this month, and I think May 15th, on where we are in certain states and counties on what we can do to, spin the wheel again. So,
well, what surprises me about the whole situation is that practically the entire world is in the same situation now, but so far it hasn't really felt like it has brought all the countries closer together, because not only industries like the filmmaking industry, which of course on a global or even national levels is a tiny industry that is not even noticed by politicians and the people who make the policies, but nevertheless, like a lot of those things should be decided on a international level. And because you mentioned the film productions before, I mean, the problem is, of course, that everything is stopping right now. I think the idea that you said that a production company that you're working with is doing, like putting the entire crew in quarantine for 2 weeks in order to find out if anybody has the virus, and then being able to work together almost as normal, is actually a brilliant idea. And if that would be worked out on an international level, not just for the filmmaking industry, for many other industries, I think a lot of the work could continue and people could be put back to work.
Yeah, I mean, I think always notable in our industry in particular, safety has always put it a precedent. When we're talking about rigging heavy lights on set, or dealing with even someone who might be sick or something like that. So our industry generally has a very thoughtful response and a very appropriate response to keeping people safe, but also keeping people working. And I think everyone's kind of going to discover what that's going to look like, in a unique way. If you're filming something in, I don't know, Wisconsin, it's going to look very different than if you're going to be filming something in Los Angeles at the moment. Same for New York. New York's going to be kind of the trickiest one to get back to proper production work, safely at least, because everything that films in New York generally films in a fairly small area. But I'm looking forward to, getting back to work, and I'm looking forward to figuring out the best ways that we can work. I have been super cautious. I've gone literally to a grocery store once since March, the beginning of March. Full hazmat gloves, mask, that thing, disinfecting the products before they even got into the house. Mainly because I'm trying not to get sick, because I have a feeling I'm going to start working immediately once the doors open. So really, it's on my responsibility to just stay healthy. So in between my amateur haircut skills and working out on the treadmill and things like that, yeah, I'm just trying to stay active with my mind, working on projects here. You guys are doing the right thing with the filmmaking competition. I think that's fun for everybody right now, and I think that's exciting the community and keeping people positive. So good job with that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to do our best, and I think one of the things that are positive in this whole crazy situation is that you see, at least in the community, that people are sharing their knowledge. There's a lot of companies putting out free resources. That if people want to stay active, keep learning, they have a lot of opportunities to do so. And I think every day we're posting 1 or 2 posts about companies giving away free stuff for workshops or anything like that. So that's kind of cool to see.
I got something coming soon that you guys you're gonna love, and it is
all
free.
Right. You definitely have to tell us before it actually hits the web.
Got to finish programming it.
Yeah,
it's hard.
good.
Hard work.
Let's finish the entire conversation on a lighter note. Actually, let's move on to an audience question, which is relating to something we talked about much earlier. Photographic Elements is asking, did Canon make a deal with Red? Is that why Red has RF mount and Canon did not put RF on their C300 Mark III? Komodo, the first cinema camera to launch with RF mount? ?
I wish I knew the grimy details there. I mean, there's certainly some sort of thing going on, but whether we're ever going to really know about it, who knows? Obviously, there's got to be some love. I mean, even in Canon's recent press announcement, they announced some Red support for their monitors, which was mind-blowing. So whatever's going on, I think it's really interesting. We get into this this zone where there's a lot of conversation about brands and things like that, but I think it'll shock people that at a certain level, how many companies actually work with each other. Sometimes even on a closer basis. And I certainly can't talk about some of those things, but like I was filming in London and I rented Red cameras from Arri, and I kind of still shoot with everything. And, I think it's an interesting thing. So I really just want to see the technology moving forward to get us more powerful tools for content creation. Because that's literally what I used to make a living and kind of what I love doing too. So, whatever handshakes are going on behind closed doors or deals, I don't care.
All right, I think that's a good way of ending this. Thank you so much, Phil, for your time.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
We should definitely continue this in a recorded conversation about one of your projects or anything like that in the near future. And now we're going to move on to our next guest, Christoph Tilley, who will tell us why he thinks it's a great idea to spend all your money or all your company money on something new right now, even though it's the middle of a crisis, which is an interesting way of seeing it. But let's play some of Christoph's work while I'm getting him on the call.
Cool. Thanks, guys, and thanks, chat.
Thank you.
See you guys around.
Thank you. Are you ready?
causing confusion and concern.
Hi, Christoph, I have you on the line now. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks for joining. Thanks for inviting me to join this live stream.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Actually, we had you on a live panel last year in November. In case some people didn't see this, maybe Jacob can post the link to that in the live chat on YouTube and Facebook. You did a talk for us about how you tried to buy yourself into being a cinematographer, really. So you bought a really expensive camera, the F65, and we're trying to buy yourself into the filmmaking industry. Can you give me a very, very short summary of that for people who haven't seen that live talk?
Exactly. Thanks. Yeah, the title of my talk was I bought an expensive camera and now I'm a DP. So this kind of very, very provocative title. I chose this very provocative title just because, in a nutshell, it was like this. I wanted to join. I wanted to get a grip, get a hold in the industry, and I saw an opportunity to buying expensive gear and learning with that expensive gear to step up my game in cinematography and get a better DP eventually, to get better and more interesting jobs. And in the end, it worked out. I got a lot of interesting jobs, and I stepped up my game of cinematography, and I got a better DP in the end. So basically, that's what I got from this.
But you kind of left out the most interesting part of the talk, which was like you realized that the expensive camera doesn't make you a better DP.
Exactly. So that's what I learned. I learned that I always thought when I was very young and I wanted to get into the industry, I thought a better camera makes my images more interesting, makes me a better DP just by having that camera, just by shooting with the camera. And after having that camera and after playing around with it, I just realized it's not the camera. It's not the gear. It's like it's the guy who is everything that's in front of the camera, and the person who operates the camera, like all the arts are how you shoot stuff and how you light stuff. That's the most important thing, and it's not the gear, it's the craft. But in the end, having that gear and knowing that and learning that it's all about the craft and it's not about the gear, eventually made me a better DP by getting back to the roots and learning all that stuff that really matters.
Well, maybe you can give people a bit of background of the kind of stuff you're working on as a DP. I mean, we saw the ASICS commercial, but are you focusing mainly on commercials?
Yeah, I just shoot commercials. I'm shooting some private projects, but even that private projects are like commercials, because I kind of like the way commercial work is like. It's very short paced. It's a short project time span. So you just go out, shoot something, shoot like a little spec, and you get very fast response. So a project is done in a week and not in months or years. So the turnaround is much quicker. That's why I like commercials.
I mean, one interesting thing, you're one of the few your company is one of the, I guess, few production companies in commercials right now that is still working quite a lot. I think it's partly to do with the fact that you're making the commercials for the government, which is actually telling people to stay at home here in Austria, right?
So basically, we had a lot of work before the crisis, and after the crisis started, we got even more work because My production company specializes in very fast turnarounds because we have all that gear. In fact, I'm in the studio right now, and in the background there's just our lighting stuff we have. So we do have all the gear, all the stuff, all the lenses, all the lights at our office, and that's why we are super quick in shooting high-end commercials or high-end stuff. So our turnarounds are like less than 12 hours. So for instance, we shot for the Austrian government, and we got the job 12 hours before they aired the first commercial. So the turnaround was 12 hours of getting the job and having it on air. So getting models, getting locations, shooting with like a small team, but then even that edited, graded, and distributed. So the turnaround was crazy quick, but yeah, we made it work.
Yeah, actually, I really had to laugh when I saw you on TV and also your daughter in 2 of your commercials. So you probably were short of having a scouting agency there.
We are quick, but it's very hard to get. You know, with the crisis, of course, it's very, very hard, and also we have high security standards. So we thought about getting an actor. We casted actors, of course. We casted them online. We thought about how to get the actors from their apartment to the location where we want to shoot. But in the end, the actor the agency chose, and we chose. He didn't want to do it in the end. So that's why 5 minutes before we were ready to shoot, the actor just told us he won't come, and that's why I was like, okay, so I have to do it. And I gave my operator my first AC. I gave him the camera. And I was like, okay, now I'm the one who plays the family father, because in fact I was the only one on set who really is a family father.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, everybody. It didn't look like an improvised shot. You called me up a couple of days ago because you wanted to share with our audience something which is a very interesting proposition. So basically, what you told me on the phone was, well, we're in the middle of the crisis. Nobody's earning any money. I want to spend all my money that I earned in the last few months in order to invest into new gear. And particularly you want to buy, or you already bought, a bolt motion control robot, which is actually quite expensive. Exactly. So how did that happen?
So I think there was some kind of some saying that goes like, crisis is always a chance. So I think that's very much true to that, because I think every crisis like we are right now is something we of course everybody knows we need to make the best out of it. And I thought we shot so much, we earned a lot of money the last couple of months. I don't want to just save it because I'm a bit afraid of a big money inflation. So I thought, okay, what should I do with the money? The best thing to do with the money is to invest it in our own company, to invest in our own performance. So we have a great camera, we have great lenses. What should we invest in? I don't want to invest into something like put my money into some kind of investment with the bank, or buy some shares, because that's not how I am. I want to invest into something that really comes from my heart, and I'm a filmmaker at heart, and I want to invest into my craft. So getting another set of lenses or stuff just didn't do it for me. But I always dreamt about having a motion control system. And that's why I thought, okay, crisis is a chance. Social distancing is a thing. Robots are coming. So let's invest into a robot. And that's what we did. I just called the guys from Mark Roberts Motion Control, because I think Bolt is the industry standard in motion control. And I asked them how quick we could get one, because we have some shoots coming up in our studio where I'm right now, where we're going to shoot some pack shots, some slow motion stuff on our Phantom. And I asked them, how quickly can I get a Bolt? And they said 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And just like, I just want to hand the camera a little. And here we are. We got one. So basically, we are in the studio. We locked ourselves into the studio because getting one of these things isn't as straightforward as getting a camera and turn it on and like being ready to shoot. It's very complicated. So with the whole package, you get 5 days of training with a specialized trainer from Bolt. So you need these days of 5 training, because it's not just like they tell you, yeah, there are some settings you can apply. This is very hardcore, complicated stuff that's going on. I just want to show it because one of my colleague, Rafael, he's right here. And all this stuff, looks like this, and he's programming it. So a lot of work is ahead of us just to get this thing going and to learn it, how to use it. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. So it's one of
I hope you are a good employer, because he has the control on the robot.
The Bolt has 1.40 meters of reach, so I'm 2 meters away from it. So every safety regulation is checked here.
So actually, I mean, these things have been around for a while. I've seen them on a lot of, I think, there's a corner at IBC. They're always in the same corner. It has been fascinating for the last 10 years to watch it evolve every year. It's never really been something that, we've done a video about, because we think it's out of reach for a lot of filmmakers. But of course, it's a typical rental item. So yeah, I'm sure it has its market, and I'm not aware. I mean, I guess there's not many around here in Central Europe. But what exactly are your plans of doing with it?
Oh, I thought getting a Bolt, because 2 things. We have these couple of shoots coming up where a Bolt would add a lot of value to that shoot. So of course the shoots already are budgeted, so the Bolt is way out of budget. But if I always would have got my gear or rented out my gear matching the budget, I would never have gotten an F65 in the first place, or an Alexa and stuff. So I would never have been able to evolve my business. So basically, that's my business philosophy. Getting better things to evolve my shooting style. But that's the first thing. And the second thing why I got one is, like, I had a shoot in January this year where I needed a Bolt because the concept called for a Bolt, and the only available Bolt was in Warsaw, and the next one was in Hamburg. So I learned that in Central Europe, around in Vienna, there is no Bolt. You just can't get one of these systems. The next one would be 600 kilometers away, and it's very expensive to get the Bolt from Warsaw to Vienna, because you need to get the operator with them, you need to pay the logistics. It's very complicated and time-consuming and expensive to get a Bolt shoot going on in Austria. So that's why I thought it's kind of a niche, and I called some of my best grips and gaffers and people I normally work with on shoots, and asked them what they think about getting a Bolt in Vienna. And they freaked out. It was like a dream would come true, because there have been so many shoots where they would wanted a Bolt, but they couldn't get one because of several reasons. This would make the Vienna film industry, or the Austrian film industry, more interesting for high-end commercial shoots, like for instance for pack shots, or high-end slow motion pack shots. So I thought, okay, if nobody has one, and this is the kind of a niche, I want to get one, because I think every filmmaker in our region can gain from that by just having it available.
I mean, it's also something that kind of can make you kind of more independent, right? Because it's pre-programmed. I mean, product shots can be pre-visualized. Let's say you do a product shot of a shoe with a special movement around it or something. You could previs it, and then you get the shoe sent by the company. So the client or the agency, in theory at least, don't even have to be there, which of course is great in social distancing times. Exactly. So it makes you independent in a way.
Exactly, and I think that's something, that's future stuff. But I think that because the most projects we're working as a company right now are stock projects. So we basically, just like our post-production department, our editing department is they're getting, they have amounts of work you can imagine. They're working all the time. But the people who normally work on shoots, going out to shoots, they don't have so much to do, because most of the shoots got postponed. So basically, I think that companies like ArtGrid, Film Supply, and stock footage company platforms like this will gain a lot from this crisis. And I think there will still be a big market for commission shoots, where where you just don't find it on stock. For instance, ASICS, one of our clients, they want to have a nice high-end product shoot of their new shoe, but they just couldn't get it because they can't fly in a team. They can't book a team because nobody really can go to studios and have a big team around. So basically what we thought about having our own studio, we have our bolt set up here. So basically what the companies could do, they could send us their products and we can shoot it here for a very very cheap, for instance.
Actually,
Yeah,
it's very interesting that you mentioned this. I had an interview the other day with the head of Red Rock Micro, Brian, exactly about this topic. This is an interview that will go online in the next days, part of our virtual show. And he has, it's called Eclipse for robots. It's actually a focus system, focus iris zoom system, exactly for that. And he was working, or he's working together with Autodesk to bring this precise control, motion control to the camera itself. And I have to say that was one of those interviews that I came in with not so much knowledge, because this is not my expertise as a documentary filmmaker. But it was quite interesting to listen and to learn. And now, by coincidence, when we are talking to you about that robot, it all kind of clicked together. Yeah, so it's very interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think these kind of shoots are getting much more. I think this could be some kind of, that's very interesting in the future. Just, you know, being able to have quick turnarounds, very efficient turnarounds, money efficient turnarounds for clients for standardized shoots. For example, product shoots like for shoots, lenses, cameras, you name it.
What are your first plans on shooting with the Bolt?
We have a food commercial coming up. Actually, we're going to shoot on Thursday, the first shooting day for the food commercial. But I don't know if we could make it with the Bolt, because I thought it's more straightforward. Like this thing works, but it takes time to get it used to how to use it. So basically, I don't know if we can use it Thursday, but definitely a food commercial would be the first thing. And we have a lot of interesting ideas what we could do as promo stuff with that thing.
I mean, you mentioned at the beginning that it's very hard to transport those things, which is one of the reasons why it's so expensive getting them from another city. But I think this is the Bolt Junior, right? I mean, it's still quite big, but is this more movable?
We got the first thing I asked the guys from Mark Roberts Motion Control was the transportation, the dimensions when you put it in transport mode, because we have our studio in a very old building in Vienna, in the center of Vienna, and our elevator is super small. It's like one of the smallest elevator ever. It's like just 2 people fit inside the elevator, and even then it's like super tiny. And the first thing I sent them images and exact measurements of the elevator and asked them, does the Bolt Junior fit inside there? Because we are in the 3rd floor, and I don't want my guys or myself to carry that thing up into the studio every time we have a shoot outdoors. So the first thing I asked them, will it fit? And they answered yes. The Bolt Junior Plus, like the new one, that I think it just came out a year ago. This will fit in the elevator, because you can change the base. Yes. You can change it to wheels. I just put this thing off and like put wheels in. Actually, the wheels are back there, and then it's like, I think 120 kilos or something, and you just like can move it like a dolly and move it wherever you want. So that's the most interesting thing of this robot, of the small one, because you can put it basically anywhere, in every apartment, outdoors, indoors, wherever you want it.
I like the way you're trying to convince us that it's all doable. It's actually nice to hear. Next thing, maybe I'm gonna have one too and just send it out there to shoot a documentary instead of me.
Exactly. That's a funny thing, because my most favorite first AC, I always make fun of him. Like I always tell him, I'm shooting everything myself. I don't need you anymore and stuff. And we make fun of ourselves on Instagram. And he saw on Instagram that I'm getting a Bolt, and he asked me why. And I texted him back, so I don't need you anymore. And then he was like, okay, let's make the next run and gun shoot with that thing. And I was like, touche.
Well, at some point, you will have good autofocus on your professional camera as well. So, all right, we have a question from the audience to you, Christoph. Richard Gillespie is asking, Christoph, what are you doing to sustain your workforce at the moment?
You mean the employees?
To keep employees, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the post-production department has so much to do. So the post-production department, they work from home. They took their PCs and their iMac Pros and stuff. They took it home and they work from home. So basically, we have a shared workflow with Frame.io and with our shared space. So basically, the post-production department has more to do than before the crisis. And for everybody else that used to be working on shoots, we have this kind of, I don't know what's it called in English. It's called Kurzarbeit. That's from the government. It's kind of some kind of support, like a governmental support for employees to give them kind of free time, so they get paid a little less, but we don't have to fire them when they don't have anything to do. So basically, we look forward to in May bring everybody back again, because we have a lot of shoots coming up. So basically, in April we just had this kind of little downtime, but we ramp it up in May.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, Kurzarbeit is like short work, and basically, I think the idea is to explain to our international audience, to the government pays the majority of the fees and takes over from the company, because it's still cheaper for the government to do that than to pay actually unemployed people. Yeah, and it would be much harder to, of course, fill up a company again with a trained workforce after the crisis is over. So
just for explanation, we do have 26 employees right now. We had 26 employees right now. So this is if we stop working for a month, this is very hard to keep up with the money flow. With 26 employees cost a lot of money, as you can imagine.
Absolutely. We have a question from Gerrit Schulze. Christoph, it's actually not a question, I guess it's a suggestion, but maybe you can comment on that. Christoph, you could even scan products for clients for CG animations using the Bolt robot using photogrammetry.
Exactly. We have in our company, we have 2 people getting trained on the Bolt. It's like the first one is still Rafi. Still here. He's our DIT, and he's our IT manager, chief of IT and DIT on set. And the second one is our 3D guy and 3D and head of motion design and VFX. So basically, why I chose the head of VFX to get trained on the Bolt is exactly like something like this, because we had that shoot in January where we used a Bolt and a rented out Bolt. And the task was to put in motion graphics tracked to the camera. And this was the easiest thing ever, because we got the actual camera positions out of the Bolt into our cinema5D comp. So basically, we hadn't to do any tracking, and we could like put in our motion graphics on set the minute after we got that shot. So combining 3D motion graphics, computer imagery with real life imagery is the easiest thing ever with some kind of motion control system like this. So basically, that's one of the main reasons we got that.
Interesting. Do you think you will ever upgrade from Cinema4D to Cinema5D?
I'm already doing that every time checking Cinema5D.
Very good. Yeah. So you mentioned that it's going to be a big time for stock filmmaking. That's an interesting proposition. Do you think? What would you recommend for somebody who doesn't own, like the typical indie filmmaker? We also posed a similar question to Phil Holland, who we just talked to before, a LA-based cinematographer, right before we had the call with you. So what would your idea be to sustain this whole crisis as a small independent filmmaker, if you're out of jobs right now?
I think my main suggestion would be don't wait. It's like, I think I have a feeling that everybody who waits for that crisis to end, for these kind of people, it will never end, because that's the present right now is our new normal. Is our new normal. I don't think it will be over in a month. Now, of course, we will ramp up our workforce and people will come back and we will get more jobs, but we need to deal with that. Not the next month, not the next couple of months. I think this will be the new normal. This will be the kind of shoots, the kind of way we shoot, the kind of how important stock footage got will be defining the next couple of years. So what I would suggest is like deal with it, make the best out of it, and if you can, just like go out and shoot. Just do stuff, release stuff, do it on your own, learn stuff. It's like the best time ever being at home, learning new tools, improve your color grading skills, improve your editing skills, learn something new, do motion design things. It's like the best thing ever.
I think we are 100% behind what you say. When Nino came up with the idea of the virtual show, that's exactly the type of things of moving on, not to wait for others, not to wait for others to decide. It's simply to move on. And in our specific case here is to cater our filmmaking industry with some news, and companies were working hard to come to a certain date and expose their products and their ideas. So that was actually a perfect fit for us to step in and do what we're doing now, and also enhance it by talking to cinematographers and people from our community about the workflow and about everything that they want to share. So I think it's absolutely a valid advice. Move on and try to get used to the new reality.
Exactly.
So, what should we tell to people? That's all nice and fine, but I think a lot of us are in a comfortable position where either you have saved money or you have another income stream. But a lot of people who are working from paycheck to paycheck, or if you're not a cinematographer, let's say you are a sound assistant or something like that, it's probably not so easy. What would your recommendation be? I mean, as a filmmaker, you can probably start shooting stock footage. It will take some time until this generates some income. But what should a sound person do?
I would suggest investing into yourself, not with money, with time. Like for instance, if as I'm an employer for like kind of people like sound assistants or like sound technicians and stuff. So because I didn't went to film school. I'm not in any network, because that's the biggest difference between me and a lot of my colleagues is that I don't care about networks. I don't go to any networking meetups, stuff like this. I just shoot, and we got and by shooting and by working hard on our company, we got one of the biggest film production companies in Vienna. So basically, what I did is like, I'm searching for people, not by asking colleagues who's the best sound technician, like by getting recommendations. I just Google it. I just search for people. So for instance, if you're a sound technician and you want to get interesting jobs and more jobs and stuff like this, just like invest into yourself by promoting yourself, not with Facebook ads, but just like making cool stuff or like being on Facebook, like giving people advices and just like promoting yourself, because eventually it will come back to you.
That's very, very good advice. And and I think there's always stuff to do. That's one of the things I said to Bobo, our director, yesterday. It was like, have you ever been bored? And we were both like, no, we don't know the concept of being bored. When we like Johnny, when Johnny mentioned that, when we had the idea for the virtual show, this was like the logical thing to do. There is no NAB, there is no Photokina, where we usually go to report and network and meet other people and talk to filmmakers like yourself, but in person. It's like, okay, what can we do? We're not supposed to go anywhere. Let's just try to do it from our studios. I mean, it's not easy because Johnny is in Japan right now. We are here in Vienna. Our entire team is very, very global and spread around the globe. So actually, we've been used to the decentralized working for a very long time. It was just a question of taking it to the next step. And Yeah, and I think that's in a similar fashion. Everybody can do that in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I called you, because I decided getting the Bolt, and that's why I called you and was like, hey, you know, I'm getting a Bolt. Do we want to talk about that? And you were like, hell yeah, of course, that's crazy. Let's talk about that. And I was like, cool. That's, you know, that's just the thing. Like talking about things and talking to people, and like the most inspiring thing ever was like, I always thought making a YouTube channel, and I actually did. I did 2 tutorials on color grading because I love color grading myself, and they got I made some videos for cinema5D actually, and they were pretty popular. And I thought about, cool, that's making YouTube videos is a thing, and I could do that. But then in the end, I got so much work, I didn't find any time to make more videos. But then Nino invited me over for the talk last year at the photo at the adventure stage, for the cinema5D stage, and the response I got from that talk, that I bought an expensive camera, now my DP talk, I got so much positive response. A lot of people wrote me on Instagram. A lot of people made nice comments on YouTube. I thought about, hey, cool, that I can tell people something that might inspire some, maybe younger filmmakers, and just to learn and to keep on pushing your limits. I thought this is something that really gives me positive vibes and makes makes me feel good. And that's why I thought doing more things with cinema5D, because I like I like good feelings.
Absolutely, and you mentioned the review that you did. Actually, you did one of the most popular reviews we've ever had on our YouTube channel was made by you, and it was really creative. It was about a Hasselblad medium format camera. I don't recall the name. It has around 200,000 views. Maybe Jacob can post a link in the comments here on YouTube and on Facebook, because it's an extremely, even if you're not into the camera, but the way you've made that review was amazing. It was really creative.
Yeah, I thought YouTube is all about entertainment, right? And I didn't see any sense in making a very technical video, even though it was very technical. But in the end, I thought I need to make it as entertaining as possible, and and that's, I think people appreciated that, but it's so much work.
It looked like a lot of work. I have a question. In terms of technology, like you know, we've come a long way since your expensive camera that you bought a lot of years ago, the F65, came out. Now, you know, high resolution cameras are a standard. You know, like very inexpensive cameras now deliver an amazing quality. Where do you see everything moving in the not too distant future in terms of filmmaking?
That's a good question. Honestly, I don't know. Nobody knows. It's like every DP. Of course, you can see trends. It's like a couple of years ago, everybody shot handheld. Everybody had this, you know, shaky hand camera look. Now, like high-end commercials, nobody wants to shoot any more shaky vignettes, shaky handheld. Everything is super, you know, interesting, like on a dolly or on a crane. So I have a feeling that high-end DPs, for commercial work, always try to achieve something that couldn't be achieved very easily. So, for instance, when it was very hard, when it was impossible to get that film look going on with shallow depth of field, with large sensors, everybody was going crazy about the first 5D Mark IIs, and everybody wanted to shoot the large sensor with like large depth of field, like super like large format sensor with crazy f-stops. But then everybody shot with that, and so the people moved on to something different. Then a couple of years later, everybody shot on gimbals, and now the high-end DPs won't like. Of course, they will use gimbals for specific shots, but back 3 years, everything was shot on gimbals. Even I had every shoot I used a gimbal, and now it's like, I think I have a feeling that more interesting, more complex shots where they have very timed camera moves, where I have very interesting moving camera in a very technical way, but in a creative technical way, is something people strive for. And I think the Bolt will help me achieve that, for instance, but that's just my personal preference.
Do you think that computational cinematography will at some point make large sensors irrelevant? Meaning, like if my small sensor in my phone is capable of delivering shallow depth of field, controlled depth of field, and it's also very, very light sensitive, do I still need a camera with a large sensor in, let's say, 2 or 3 years' time?
It's a very good question. I think it's just interesting. Today I talked with my chief editor chief about this, because we shoot, for instance, A6 or Gardena and stuff, and we do a lot of crisis content for them right now, and we get super low res handy videos by users or by product managers, and we need to intercut them with our Alexa Mini LF super high res shot stuff. And interesting is that when you get that 480 by 320 handy video, super compressed via WhatsApp, we thought it won't ever cut, it won't ever fit that high res thing when you put it together in the edit. But interestingly, it's kind of interesting mix. It's just, I think the mix is interesting. So basically, just shooting on phones, just shooting on compressed, very highly compressed video, even if it looks interesting, maybe with a very modern phone, it always will profit from very, analog or very, it's something different from that very digital style. So basically what I try to do is like, I like to mix things up. I like to shoot on very old lenses and then also shooting on very new lenses and putting in the edit, putting it together and mixing things up to make it more interesting for the viewer.
Well, one thing that a lot of TV cameramen are now worrying about is the fact that now people are getting used to, and TV channels and production companies are getting used to using Skype recordings from, laptops on news all the time. So the question is, once this crisis is over, will they probably, not use as many camera teams anymore, because they realize, well, we don't have to send somebody there. We can just ask the person if they can, start Skype or Zoom or whatever, and we record the call, because audiences have accepted it during the crisis and we've had better viewership than ever before. Why wouldn't they afterwards?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they will lose their jobs. I think the amount of content we produce, that amount of content that is produced will increase so much that there's things for everybody to do. Like they will still keep shooting. Of course, Skype interviews and screen recordings will increase, but still, I think they will have their niche. But in the end, I think that's exactly that mix matters. Yeah, it's everything. I don't think that something will die in a crisis. It's just like it will level up.
I have a different view on this, especially being a news cameraman for some years, which I think is the best school ever if you want to move later to documentary or whatever type of production. It just keeps you alert and gives you the possibility to identify opportunities while you're shooting, especially if you're doing news. I've seen in my career how the crew in general is getting smaller all the time. Yeah. It used to be the driver, the director, the lightman, the soundman, the producer, and the cameraman. And of course, it's all moved to, in many places around the world, to one-man band.
Yeah.
And news is a very expensive thing to do in general. Yeah. And if the network will find a way to cut the person, and I always used to say that the cameraman is the last one to go, because you need somebody to shoot. But if they will find a way, literally like we do now, there's a camera in front of me and in front of all of us, and the picture is kind of, when I say acceptable, means for news purposes, it might be good enough. They will not hesitate.
Yeah,
they will not hesitate.
You might be true, but just for instance, we shot in the crisis the last couple of weeks. We shot a documentary. It's airing on a private TV station in Austria. It's a documentary about lockdown, about ourselves being trapped in our homes, and we just shot that on our screens. It's like we didn't use a camera. It's like we called it the user-generated documentary, and it's super fresh. It's just like post-production and screen recordings. But we had a camera team going out shooting empty streets of Vienna, because that's something you wouldn't shoot on your laptop. So basically, we had a team going out shooting the nature, shooting empty streets, but all the people we shot on the screens. And this was one very interesting thing. I saw one very famous photographer, still photographer for commercials, and he did a very interesting project. He had a shoot with models on his screen. So basically, he had a screen recording, a FaceTime session going on with his models, and then he was just like he was photographing his own screen while giving the models like some kind of advices or some kind of
instructions.
Yeah. And he just shot his screen, and in the end, he posted the pictures, and you could see that rainbow, the moire of the screen, and see the pixels, but it was still a fashion shoot. So I think he thought out of the box, and this was super interesting because he made the best out of it. So maybe TV guys will be like filming the screens of their computers.
I wrapped up the last documentary that I shot before the crisis here in the studio, just filming somebody doing a Skype interview. But 90% of the documentary before that were actual interviews. But like a lot of productions were just halted and they had to be ended somehow. Yeah. But yeah, thank you. Let's wrap it up here, Christoph. Thank you very much for your time, and we should definitely, keep us posted, please, on your plans with the Bolt. Maybe we can involve it in some kind of a camera review in the future. That would be really cool.
Around the corner, every time you have a new piece of gear you want to have a very nice shoot, a product shoot with, so send it over to me. I will shoot it with that thing.
I will happily come over to see that happening. Thank you, Christoph.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph.
And guys, we are now moving on to our final interview today with Alister Chapman. Alister is a director of photography and filmmaker based in the UK. And he's famous because of his blog, xdcamuser.com. He's one of the leading experts on Sony cameras. And he's also very specialized in filming storms around the world. He's actually a storm chaser. He's filming the Aurora Borealis. He's filmed, thunderstorms all around the world. And let's just start off by showing a clip by Alister while I get him on the call. It's my pleasure to welcome Alister Chapman to the call. Hello, Alister.
Hi everyone.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us during our virtual show. So yeah, I mean, maybe you can. I introduced you a little bit, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about your background and your kind of work.
Yeah, sure. So name's Alister Chapman. I've been working in television pretty much all of my life, so it's 30 odd years now. The very first show that I worked on was actually for the BBC, a little show called Top Gear that you may have heard of. But back then it was a show about either motor racing, motorsports, or the cars that people drove to and from work, nothing like what it is today. I've done all sorts in my career. I've done windsurfing, filming windsurfing, snowboarding, storms, tornadoes, northern lights, a lot of adventure stuff. And now I do a lot of short films and things like that. And people probably know me best for my relationship that I have with Sony. So I'm a Sony ambassador and been working, helping Sony run events, workshops, roadshows, training events and stuff like that for a very long time. So I like to experiment. I'm an experimenter. I like to push boundaries. I like to understand all the technical stuff. So yeah, that's me, I guess.
Alister, I have a question because again, we would love to inspire the young generation. Did you go to filming school? Did you learn, or it's really learning by doing?
No, I'm very much a learning by doing person. So I did a degree in electronic engineering, and then my first job was actually working designing systems for live television. So miniature cameras, and when I say miniature, I mean cameras that were that big. So it was miniature cameras and microwave links and all sorts of things. But it was pretty boring, to be honest. At the time, I drove a rally car of my own. And the company I worked for, they had some cameras, and I started putting the cameras in my car and getting some really good results, actually. And then one day, a guy from the BBC came to visit the factory where I was working. And I'd actually driven the race car, the rally car, to work that day. And the car was outside with one of the cameras in it. And he asked my boss, he said, what's all that about? And he explained that it was me experimenting. And basically a month later, I was working for a production company that worked for the BBC, doing all the onboard cameras and in-car cameras for the World Rally Championship and Formula One. It happened that quickly. Now, from there, though, I did do photography at school. So I was in the school photography club. But from there, because I had a bit of background with photography, when you do the rallying and you do the in-car cameras, the cars, they come into a service point and then they disappear. They go off and they race around and then they come back maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours later. So very often 2 hours, even 3 hours sometime, I'd just be sitting around twiddling my thumbs with nothing to do. So they gave me a camera, which was a 16mm film camera, and said, why don't you go off and film while you're waiting? So then I started filming the rallying, did a couple of events on 16mm film, but almost straight away we were then moving to very early video, so U-matic, and then very early Betacam, and really sort of started from there. I'd always sort of played with video cameras. My parents had video cameras, so I was quite familiar with them. And I'm really self-taught. I mean, the engineering, yes, I studied that, to a degree level. So I know that stuff, but the creative stuff, I've just taught myself, and, grading, post-production, all of that's self-taught.
Nice to hear.
How did you take the recent developments? Of course, I mean, I saw one of your Facebook posts, and I thought it's a good idea to get in touch with you because, of course, I mean, your work life has been severely affected by the current situation as well. Yeah. How did it come about for you?
Well, actually, it came about for me fairly gradually, and I was getting worried. Late mid-Feb, actually, middle of February. So I'm currently, because we've got new camera from Sony FX9 just over my shoulder here, I've been doing a lot of workshops and training events with Sony to get people up to speed, how to get the best out of it and all of those sorts of things. So I've been traveling a lot. And when I'm not doing that, I'm traveling a lot anyway. So normally this time of year, I'd be in the US, chasing storms and tornadoes and doing all of that. And of course, NAB would be on right now.
Chasing NAB.
Yeah, right. So, this is a time of year for me where there's a lot of traveling involved. And about the middle of February, I was sort of looking at what was going on because there were some discussions about doing some events in Asia. And it's like, that's not going to happen, is it? I'm not going to be going to Asia anytime soon, looking at what was going on in Asia and Singapore and places like that. And then I started looking at other events that I had coming up. And I started to get a horrible feeling that all of a sudden this lot was just going to disappear. People weren't going to travel. And to be honest as well, so my wife, she has a heart condition, so she's particularly vulnerable to it. So I didn't want to go somewhere where I might pick it up and bring it back home. So I was also considering from my own point of view whether I should be traveling so much. And I was just stunned at how quickly actually it all happened. So middle of February, I could see the signs were there that work was going to tail off, and I could see it tailing away. I could see events being cancelled, workshops, training going away. But then when basically everybody got locked down, that was it. And I went from having a diary that was absolutely full of jobs. I mean, I have flights booked all over the world, to the States for NAB, to the US for storm chasing, I was supposed to be going to Cairo, and all of that stuff. And basically overnight, it was just all switched off. And I went one day to having one of the busiest looking beginnings to the year that I've had in a very, very long time. I was really excited, looking forward to everything, to nothing overnight. And it was quite an eye-opener, because this is not like anything that's come before. It really isn't. Nobody's been here before. We've never had anything like this. And I don't think I saw it coming. But I suppose really, if you think about it, it was going to happen one day, but you kind of guess not in my lifetime. So I've been trying to make them. Yeah, go.
Out of curiosity, because you're also running your own blog, as we said before, is it only a hobby, or this blog also serves a professional purpose in terms of income?
So XDCam user, my website and blog, I don't make any money out of that at all. It is a marketing tool for myself. That's what it all started off for. It goes back a very long time. It used to be way back called tvcameraman.info, and used to be picture profiles for Betacam cameras and digital beta cameras. And then it grew into XDCam user and to what it is today. And I've never made I make a tiny bit of money out of some of the sort of Google ads that are on there, but it's never really been done as a money-making tool. It's really been as a marketing tool for myself.
But will you consider now to change stuff because of the situation?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, it is something that I'm looking at. I'm in a lucky position. I am. So for a very long time, if this had happened to me 5 years ago, I'd be really in a lot worse situation than I am now. The last 5 years, I've been able to pay off a lot of bills, pay off virtually all of my debts, pay off all my camera leases and everything else. Been working hard to do that, to minimize my debts. I am now in my mid 50s, and I'm not thinking of retiring, but I'm thinking of slowing down, doing less. So I've been trying to clear off debts and everything else so that I can, be a bit more choosy perhaps about the work that I do. So I do have some savings, which is basically my retirement fund. So I'm not desperate for money. I'm trying still to keep the website not sponsored, because it gives it a degree of independence. I don't want to be tied to sponsors, but I think I'm going to have to now. I think I have no choice, because this isn't going to go away anytime soon. I don't think, however optimistic we might be about, yay, let's get back to work next month, it's not going to happen. And anybody that travels for work, anybody that has to do a lot of work in groups of people that are strangers, I think this is going to take a very, very long time to get back to anything approaching normal. And I'm not sure it'll ever be the same again. I fly with British Airways. I've got a dozen flight vouchers with them for future flights. I don't even know if I'm ever going to be able to use them anymore. It's all very strange. It's a whole new world. So yes, I'm looking at new ways of making money, and one of those might be to monetize the website, which is not really something I've done. Also, I sell a lot of stock footage, and that's been bizarre, because I'd actually expected stock footage sales to go up, but they haven't. They've completely bombed. whereas normally stock footage sales might bring in $1,000 or more a month for me, this month it's $36, which is just a tremendous difference. So
this is surprising. I mean, especially we talked about the robot stuff and creating some stock footage and to Christoph before, but this is very surprising. Do you have any logical explanation to why it's happening?
Well, I think there's a lot of people have gone into panic mode. I mean, I see a lot of freelancers on various user groups and everything else that, it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not really, really difficult. And for some people, it must be incredibly difficult. But I think there is an element of going into panic mode. And what's been quite interesting, so normally my wife works in a local supermarket. She's not able to go there at the moment because of her condition. But she's saying that they have been taking on a lot of new staff because they've got a lot more people in the store to help with all the distancing rules and everything else. And they now have everything from airline pilots, seriously, airline pilots and a lot of air crew working in the store because they're not able to work either. And they've had the sort of the common sense, perhaps, is like, all my earnings have gone away. What am I going to do? Well, I can go and work. I can do 5 hours a day or whatever down in the local supermarket. It's something to do and it brings money in. And I do see a lot of people in our industry because they're creative people. They like to make things and create stuff that are actually refusing to go out and consider doing anything else. And there are lots of things people could do outside of our industry right now. There's, I hate to say it, but you could go and work for Amazon in a warehouse, or you could work for a supermarket. You could do deliveries. There's lots of jobs doing that. So there is work out there, but just not in our business. Within our business, what can you do? I mean, I think there's a lot you can do, but whether it makes any money or not is another thing. If you're lucky enough, if you've got a camera, even if it's a DSLR, learn how to use it better. Try things you've never done before. I was just talking to Nino before we went on air, is that tonight here in the UK, I've got the Starlink satellites are coming over about 9 o'clock. They'll be over the UK, 9 o'clock UK time. I'm quite sure they'll be crossing most of Northern Europe because they're crossing from the west to the east. So I'm going to take the camera outside with a fast lens and see if I can shoot them. I have no idea if it'll work, but it's worth a try. And I might learn some more about my camera. I'm going to try and stream it live on my Facebook page. So it's experimentation. It's trying things I don't have the time to do normally. Stock footage, yes, I'm not selling much of it right now, but it's well worth going through what footage you have and uploading it. If you've got time, use that time, use it sensibly, because stock footage sales, I'm sure they will pick up. I think they bombed out because everyone's almost stuck their head in the sand thinking, oh my God, I'm not doing what I normally do. And they've given up instead of thinking, well, what could I do? If you're somebody that does edit and work in post-production, stuff like that, you could still be making programs. Anybody can. I think there's still money to be made with corporate video and things like that, even if it's just a video for a company to say, hold on, hang on, guys. We might have to furlough you. You might have to do all these things, but bear with us. As soon as things get going, we'll kick off again. So yes, most of the work has gone away, but I think there is still bits and pieces, and there is a lot you could be doing to fill all that spare time that you have.
You do a lot of, you mentioned at the beginning that you travel a lot usually for your work, and you do a lot of workshops around the world. Have you seen any of those workshops for bigger companies moving online, or is it too early for that?
Yeah, a little bit already. So I have been doing a few, not so much workshops, but seminars and online Q&A sessions already. So that is starting to come. It is starting to happen. And it could well be that actually maybe that is what needs to happen now, not going forward. So, even when lockdown ends, it's actually in terms of being good for the environment and everything else, do a lot more of this stuff online. You can't beat face-to-face. I think there is still something very beneficial about face-to-face and meeting people and getting that much more intimate relationship that you don't get in an online session. But yes, So I'm going to be doing some stuff with some video dealers next week on Sony's FX9 cameras on how to stream with that. I've been working on some online content for Atomos that will be going online very soon, and lots of stuff. So yes, been doing some videos for Sony as well. Lots and lots of videos for Sony that will all be coming online soon. So it is happening. It does take with the bigger companies, it takes some time sometimes for them to be able to process the content and upload it and translate it into all the different languages and things like that they have to do. But yes, that is something that I am doing, and it is something that I will be doing a lot more of in the coming weeks.
That's a question I already posed to Christoph, who we talked with right before you, who is a cinematographer based here in Vienna. But do you think that now the TV channels, and you're a TV cameraman, the TV channels are getting used to streaming content from people's laptops, so basically just using the webcam for TV interviews all the time, and at the same time, because of the situation, getting really good ratings and a lot of very large viewership, especially news, a much larger one than usually. You think that even after the crisis is over, this will be something that sticks with us? I mean, like, will they stop using camera crews for a lot of the productions that they're doing?
Unfortunately, I think yes. But if we're realistic about this was coming anyway. We have things like live view already that's meant that we don't need OB trucks very often. You've got cameras with built-in streaming now. Z90 FX9 can do all this live streaming without an OB truck. So we were already downsizing that anyway. And I think now that the phone cameras, etc., let's face it, they are getting very, very good. I think it will be a lot more of send the reporter out with a phone camera to do a lot of stuff. And already, I've done stuff with Sky TV in the UK where there's been a breaking story about the weather and storms, which is my area of sort of expertise. And we've done stuff over Skype and things like that now. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. The quality isn't terrible. And I think sadly, it's accelerated something that was coming already. The budget and money for TV news is decreasing. I think there will still be the case for proper crews with proper kit and everything else. That will still exist. That's not ever going to go away. But I think we'll see a lot more of this local stuff, shorter, lower budget stuff done with Skype and with whatever, Facebook Live, whatever they choose to use. Because built-in phones and internet connection, built-in cameras, internet connections, all of that stuff is getting so much better. It was going to happen. It's just accelerated it.
I pretty much think like you. But one thing which is very interesting for me to hear from you is actually, how do you think it's going to reflect on companies like camera makers? Because many of them are traditional manufacturers. Yeah, they know the job quite well when it comes to traditional tools. What do you think will change here?
Oh, I think lots is going to change. I think we live in some very interesting times. One of the things that I think is a concern that we should perhaps be worried about is, and this is not necessarily directly related to coronavirus, but I think is just something that's coming anyway, is what we have to think about is sensors. So the sensors that we have in all of our cameras, they come generally from manufacturers like Sony or whoever's making these, but the R&D, the research and development, doesn't really come from developing a sensor for a video camera, because video camera sales are relatively low volume things. The big thing these days, or used to be, stills cameras. And that was a big driver for driving sensor technology, your DSLRs and mirrorless cameras and all of that sort of thing. But sales of those now are nowhere near what they used to be, especially the point and shoot cameras. Virtually nobody buys a point and shoot camera anymore. And that's made it very difficult for the sensor designers and developers to find the budget to develop new sensors and new sensor technology. Yes, there is a growing market for sensors for mobile phones, but those are often quite a different technology, different requirements. Size is very important, very small, compact, and everything else. A lot of automatic functions. So there is an issue right now with the budget for R&D for large sensors, especially the sort of Super 35 and that sort of thing that we've become used to using now. And I think that's going to impact us as the sales of DSLRs and stills cameras continues to decline, which it will, because the cameras in phones are getting so much better. It's going to put more and more pressure on the development of sensors in general. And that's going to mean that it's going to become more and more expensive to produce the next generations of video cameras, which is a relatively niche product. Yeah, I know the camera manufacturers, I think sort of FS7 is something like 20,000 units over its entire life, but 20,000 it's a big number, but it's not a vast number compared to mobile phones or point and shoot cameras. So I think we may have an issue going forward. And I know that some of the stills camera manufacturers are getting quite worried about whether they'll be able to afford to keep doing the development that they want to do when the market just isn't there to sell the product in volume anymore. And that will then slowly creep through to video cameras as well. And it will either make them much more expensive or innovation will slow down. FS7, that's 7 years or so on the market, that camera. It's taken Sony 7 years really to come out with a new camera, develop new sensors. Canon, the C300, C300 III, it's been, that sensor's, how old is that sensor? Similar sort of age. And I think as this goes on, we're going to see bigger and bigger gaps in when the next new sensor comes out, the next new technology comes out, because it's just going to get more and more expensive.
Yeah, at the end of the day, nobody can really compete with the money for R&D that the phone companies, the mobile phone companies are pouring into that.
Yeah, I mean, they sell millions of phones because when a new phone comes out and everyone dumps the old one and buys the new one. So, even if the phone isn't even that different, I mean, in fact, if you think about it, really, an iPhone from 5 years ago isn't that different from an iPhone of today, really. And what it does is there's not that much difference. But a new iPhone comes out and everyone's raring to buy it and they sell them in the millions. And that's where the money is, and that's where the money's going. It used to be that point and shoot cameras used to fund a lot of the R&D and the sensors that go in our video cameras because people used to buy those. There were larger sensors. And that's where that sort of R&D money came from. But that's all changing now. And I have concerns that, where will we be 10 years down the road? I think it might be quite difficult to get the sensors that we want at a sensible price.
I think you can also see now that the differential, as you mentioned, I mean, the average thing that a phone does these days is the same as it was a couple of years ago. The only big difference is a much, much better camera, because you will immediately see the difference between, what your iPhone 11 makes compared to your iPhone 5. And that's also what they started marketing-wise. The only thing that really sells a new phone is a new camera, which means they're pouring even more money into the R&D there. And that is also the next question. I mean, we see computational depth of field on photos already. So also something we talked about before with an earlier guest. But do you think that computational depth of field will be something that replaces larger sensors altogether eventually, because all the R&D goes into the small sensors now?
Well, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? That is now getting better and better. It's not there yet, I don't think. It's fairly convincing in most cases. But processing power is just going up and up and up. And the ability to put very small, low power processors in cameras is just increasing all the time. And I think we're going to see it. And one of the big things is optics is very expensive still. So good quality large sensor lenses are expensive. Just grinding glass to make lenses is still a difficult, hard thing to do. The glass itself, the raw material, is very expensive. You make the sensor smaller, the lens is smaller, it's much easier to make. You can mass produce them very, very cheaply. And we're in an interesting position right now where we do have these wonderful full frame cameras coming out from various manufacturers, but the glass is still, for parfocal cinema glass, it's still really prohibitively expensive. And of course, zoom range is almost always very limited, although the new Canon lens really seems to have shaken that up a little bit. But Yeah, these are really expensive things. So small sensors, if you can do what we do now and get that look computationally, as a purist, I don't want that to happen. I really don't. I want to do it optically. I love shooting anamorphic because of all the distortions. I mean, that's why anamorphic looks great. It's not because it's good, it's because it's rubbish. Anamorphic looks as nice as it does because it's distorted and weird and not right. But of course, even that can be simulated, computationally. Once you can measure what a lens does, you can largely replicate an awful lot of it now electronically in a computer. But I don't want to go there. That's not what I do. I really enjoy playing with lenses. I enjoy that mixing a weird lens with an odd filter and this and that and getting those things. I mean, the real technologists would turn around and say, yeah, but you can do all of that in post. And if you look at where post is now and what we do in post, we are miles ahead. I mean, most of the filtration that we used to do optically can be replicated very, very accurately in post now. I mean, you talk to people like Tiffin and all the filter manufacturers that they're struggling to sell filters because everyone's doing it in post. And it will be a great shame if we lose that craft. But unfortunately, I think the reality is that we're going to lose a lot of this stuff because it's going to be cheaper and easier.
Talking about progress, I mean, of course, let's try to be a little bit positive. Canon yesterday disclosed more information about the R5, which is, in a way, brings back Canon to the map, and also it sounds a very interesting working tool. What's your thought about this mirrorless camera?
It's very interesting, isn't it? The proof will be in the pictures, I guess. Although thinking back, I mean, what was it? What was the first of their cameras that had 4K in the DSLRs? Was it the 1D?
1DC.
Yeah, 1DC. So the 1DC had 4K in it. And at the time, I remember everyone looking at it and thinking, that's really interesting. Where are we going? And in fact, that year, Sony presented me in a behind closed doors sort of R&D session. They presented me with this camera that looked like a DSLR, but was a 4K camcorder that weighed a ton. And I just said, no, that's not what people are going to want. But the 1DC, it made a place for itself, and it did great things. But I question the form factor and things like that for video. And I also question, this whole thing of more and more pixels. You're cramming more and more pixels into the same size of sensor. You tend to have to make compromises in dynamic range and things like that, although sensor design is improving all the time. So the proof of the pudding will be in the eating there. We'll have to wait and see what the pictures are like. But yeah, I think it's a shape. It's certainly a sign of where things are going. And it's like 8K. Personally, I think 8K right now for acquisition. Yeah, absolutely. I get 8K acquisition. I completely get. 8K TVs, I'm not convinced about, because I think the average viewer in the average room is going to be really hard pushed to see or tell any difference. And then there's all the bandwidths to broadcast it. I do a lot of stuff with Philips, TV manufacturer, and I know they're introducing their 8K TVs. But one of the things that they're really focusing on is the quality of their upscaling, because they're aware of the fact that there's not going to be a lot of 8K content, and upscaling it is something that will be very important, upscaling 4K. Having said that, though, and we've seen this with 4K TVs, is that you go into a TV store right now and it's really hard to buy an HD TV because they're all 4K now, because they're no more expensive to make. And that will happen with 8K TVs. You give it another 5 years and it won't be any more expensive to make an 8K TV. And that's what they'll all be. That's what you will be buying. I'm still not convinced I want that much resolution, though. I think it's almost too much. Stuff starts to look more detailed than reality, and more textured than reality. Maybe it's just my eyes. I'm getting older and my eyes are a bit soft, perhaps. I don't know. But, sometimes more isn't always better. I think you can go too far. But interesting camera. Very much so.
Well, let's see. I mean, we had originally there was supposed to be a Sony press conference also yesterday. We'll have that on the 30th of April now. So let's see what's coming out from Sony. We can speculate now, but
You can speculate. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I know a few little bits, but I obviously can't reveal anything. So it's going to be worth watching, worth viewing. Some interesting things, definitely. But that's about all I should say, I think. Otherwise, I'll get into too much trouble.
Do you think autofocus will take over manual focusing, like even for larger sensors in the long run? Do you think there is a space for a focus puller? I mean, of course, there will always be a space for a focus puller in professional filmmaking, but I see, like before I've seen the autofocus out of the Canon and Sony, the new Sony cameras, I would have said no, but now that I'm seeing what it's capable of doing, even when shooting on the FX9 with a f1.2 lens, and it's spot on. I'm quite amazed.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it just amazing how that's suddenly taken off? Again, I think this is one of the things that if you'd look really, it was going to happen. I mean, in the world of still photography, I remember, when the first autofocus DSLRs were coming out, and everyone's going, it's okay, but it'll never replace manual focus. We'll keep auto. It's nice, but it's not going to replace manual focus. You go on almost any professional photo shoot now, and it's almost all autofocus. And I think that's what will happen in the video world as well. Now, Sony and Canon, they both laid down the bar and said, look, we can do this really well now, possibly better than somebody that's less experienced at focusing, or if the camera's moving a lot and all of those things, we can actually do this as well as, or in some cases better than a focus puller can. So everyone else is going to have to do the same to catch up, to sell their cameras. So it will become normal. It might take a few years, but it will. I mean, focus pullers aren't going to go away, because somebody, on a big budget shoot, even if you're using autofocus, somebody still needs to actually be checking for focus, because even the very best autofocus in the world is never going to be as intelligent as or know what the cinematographer is thinking. So there are going to be moments where the focus might not be where the cinematographer or the filmmaker wants it. And if the cinematographer is concentrating on the framing or the composition of the shot, he might miss those small focus shifts. So the role of the focus puller will change. I think focus pullers will still have a role doing focus manually. There will always be times where manual focus will be the only way to do it for various reasons, maybe just because the type of lens doesn't allow you to have an autofocus version. Or the focus puller will be the guy that will know how to program the autofocus system for the type of shot that they're doing, that might have a touch screen monitor that's touching it wherever it needs to be focused, or moving a joystick around or whatever to pick the areas to focus on. So that role will still exist. I just think a lot of it will be more automated, and I welcome it. Actually, for a very long time, I used to stand up in workshops and stand there and do my whole thing. I'm a professional filmmaker and a cinematographer, and autofocus is not a professional tool. And now I'm really embarrassed that I used to say that, because I'm now standing at the front of the same groups of people and saying, you know what, this is a really, really good tool. And if it makes your life easier and does the job better than you should be using it. Don't be afraid of it. So and I'm quite surprised actually how quickly for me that's happened. I mean, it's just this one camera, isn't it? For me, it's the FX9 that came out, and suddenly I'm like, whoa, I want to use this, and it's actually able to focus better than I can, which is a bit of an embarrassing thing to have to admit sometimes. I mean, there's still times when I do manually focus, but it's so good.
I guess when you move to one-man band, and you have a capable camera in terms of recording images, you need to compensate on the focus, and that's and it's a good selling point, by the way. So altogether, this is the right time and the right place to introduce those technologies.
Yeah,
I think even as a Sony user, you must have seen it coming with the Alpha series cameras. For me, as an FS7 owner, it was always frustrating that the FS7 had a terrible autofocus, but as soon as you picked up an Alpha series camera or one of the Canon cameras with the dual pixel autofocus, they were so much better. But
I mean, I'm shooting this now. This is an FS5, and I do have it set to autofocus because I don't know how I'm going to move about. I've got quite shallow depth of field, and a couple of times I've noticed it's lost focus. I know that the FX9 wouldn't do that. It would have stayed locked. So yeah, I mean, it was going to come. It was definitely going to come. You know, Canon's dual pixel was always very, very good. And as you say, the alphas were getting just ridiculously good. It has always been a little bit more challenging with video cameras because they're constantly reading the sensor at a fixed frame rate and things like that. So there's been more challenges with a video camera in doing it. But now we've got it. It's just this wonderful tool, and I'm gonna make the most of it. You know, I'm all for tools. You know, even auto exposure. You know, sometimes 90% of the time, 99% of the time, I will expose manually because I still think it's the best way to do it. But even then, there's sometimes you're in a rush, you can hit that push auto button, or you're running in and out of a house and the light's changing dramatically, then use the auto function. I mean, they're there to help you. I think there
Alistair, I can't believe you just said auto exposure. Joking.
They're tools that are there to help you. And if the situation arises where the tool does the job better than you can, use it. I mean, that's what they're there for. I think sometimes. Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that kind of brings me back to the whole mobile phone discussion. I mean, a couple of months ago when my girlfriend and I were on holiday in Barcelona, actually I brought an Alpha series camera and I brought the new iPhone 11 Pro. And I have to admit that, I haven't used the camera much because as soon as you are, first of all, of course, the size is a big issue. But even if you use proper lens, of course, it will look better if you spend the time and invest the time. But if you're on your spare time, you just pull out those new phones with 3 lenses, 3 cameras in it. And the wide angle, which equals, I think it's a 12 millimeter, completely rectilinear wide angle lens. It looks amazing. And there's, it's the same thing. I mean, it will expose perfectly. It will give you a perfect picture, even though you're in bad lighting situations. And it's something that is very frustrating as a cameraman for me, that you see some of those tools already do all those automatic functions a lot better than the professional tools.
Yes, I mean, I completely know where you're coming from. I agree. I have very often I might be doing an example. So something that I would normally be doing around about now is be at NAB taking photos, and I do it with my phone. You go to these trade shows, and in the past I'd have taken a professional camera of some description to do it, and now I take my phone because it's quicker, easier, and the result actually sometimes is better because it just deals with whatever you throw at it. I'm quite interested in what Sony are doing with their was it the XZ, I can't remember the name of the model number, their new digital cinema phone.
Xperia.
The Xperia. So I've got one model down from that, and that's got a very nice camera on it and an HDR screen and some of the functionality. But you can't ignore these things. All the phone manufacturers are now adding in features. I mean, that's quite an interesting phone, and you can get little anamorphic adapters for it and all sorts. So, it's a really interesting world that we're going into, and there's that old saying, isn't there, that the best camera is the one that you have in your hand.
I also have to say that here in cinema5D, because we test a lot of stuff and we review a lot of stuff, it's really having 2 different heads. One is us as professionals, meaning using professional tools and test them. But on the other hand, we cannot ignore where the market is moving, and that's the other head in terms of testing and reviewing mobile phones.
Yeah, and it's interesting actually that whole professional term it's getting a bit blurred now in the electronics and in cameras, isn't it? So what is a professional tool? So a professional tool, I think by definition, is something that allows you to make money.
Exactly.
So
absolutely.
A professional tool could be your phone. If your phone and we see this actually, and this comes back to something we were discussing earlier about television news and using Skype and stuff like that for TV news, is of course a lot of the TV news companies now are deliberately equipping their cameramen, or their reporters, with the latest phones, because the phone can stream. The quality of the images that phone produces is amazing. Companies like Sennheiser, they do the Bluetooth microphones that integrate with the phone, that gives you the high quality audio and everything else. A little tie clip mic with Bluetooth back to the phone, or even direct connections to some of them. So you're getting professional level audio, a picture that the viewer can't tell the difference between that and if you had sent a proper crew, and you've only got to send one person to do it. And because it's all automatic, they just click, point, shoot. So it is becoming very, very blurred. It really is. I mean, I still love working with the big cameras for what I'm shooting. There is, when you start pixel peeping, when you really, really start looking very closely, yes, there's still a big difference. When you work at it, the controllability that you have with the big cameras is still something that's really nice to have. But the two they're just coming closer and closer and closer together, and it's going to become very, very blurred as to what's what and which to use.
All right, I think it's a very, very good to almost end the conversation on. The last thing I want to ask you, Alister, you want to share a few words of inspiration. We started off very inspirationally, with what to do during crisis. Maybe we want to end with some inspiration for our viewers.
Yeah, sure. Well, all the things we've discussed here in this conversation, we've talked about the fact that our industry is probably going to be very different after this. It is different now. Obviously, it's radically different now. But even when people start going back to work, it's going to change. So I think you need to start thinking about, what am I going to do in the new future? I think we're going to enter into, I think the world will never, ever quite be the same after this. This has been a bit of a wake-up call. And they said, come on, guys, this is one virus. And I think we're very lucky that this virus isn't a lot worse than it is. It could have been much worse. So let's be thankful for that. So we're going to come into a new world. I think there will perhaps be less travel. People will be a bit more mindful of that. I think the way we do things will be slightly different. So we need to think about it, and we need to make the most of this wonderful spare time that some of us have got now to prepare for that. So if you don't know how to stream, if you've never looked into setting up streaming systems with multiple cameras, research it, find out what you might need to do. There's some software called OBS. It's free. Download it, get it on your computer. You can put all sorts of different cameras into it, learn how to use it. Learn how to set up a live stream with Facebook, with YouTube, with all of these different people. Use the time really well. If you've got a camera, I know you're probably stuck at home, can't go out beyond your home, but learn how to shoot it. Go and look at all those weird modes that you've never, ever used before. If you've never shot with log or with raw, now's a good time to learn how to do it. Underexpose, overexpose. Get some photographs. Now, this is a tip that I was given a very long time ago by an old photographer, was to use photographs when you're trying and playing with the camera, because if you shoot a photograph, it never changes. So that photograph always looks the same. So shoot that photograph and try log, try different gamma curves, different picture profiles, all of those different things. If you're somebody that does time lapse already, experiment with different frame rates and shutter speeds that perhaps you wouldn't normally do. You've got this wonderful opportunity right now with plenty of time. You've probably by now watched everything that's on Netflix and whatever that you're interested in. You're probably bored now. So now's the time to experiment and to think about what you will be doing in our new world that we're going to go into, and look at streaming in particular. I think there's going to be a lot more of that done afterwards. I know Sony have got a free trial of their virtual production suite at the moment, and that's really fascinating. If you can have a look at that, and you can look how you can create your own vision mixer on the web and feed multiple sources into it, and then from there you can go to all sorts of places, and currently there's a free trial of that, so take advantage of that. My wife is making gowns and equipment for hospitals right now, so there's lots you can do, lots you can be positive about. We're going to go into a different world. Unfortunately, I think some people are going to really struggle afterwards. I really feel for you. So what you have to do now is think about how you are going to be better than everybody else. You've got to be a little bit selfish right now, I'm afraid. And you've got to think, how am I going to succeed in this new world? What am I going to do that's going to make me better and make people choose me and pick me in this new world that we're going into, and maybe start afresh? Think of it as a fresh break. Think of it as a chance to really sort of shake your business up and come out stronger and more powerful. How about that?
Perfect, Alistair. That is really, really, really inspirational. Thank you very, very much for that.
No problem.
And
thank you.
you.
I mean, we just don't get, in our business, we don't get this time to decompress a little bit very often, and to actually think about where we're going and what we're going to do. You know, let's face it, it's going to be different. So let's think about where you want to go and create a plan. You know, I know it's difficult to plan because there's so many uncertainties, but think about next year. Where do you want to be next year, the year beyond that? What is your goal? Where do you want to end up, and how are you going to get there? And plan it out, and then go for it when things do start to happen.
Absolutely, and I think we couldn't agree more. This is the last talk we had during our live virtual show today. This has been really a pleasure, and it's you know, like, part of the effort here is exactly what you're saying. We're trying to do something new and also to make inspirational content for our audience, and trying to get people off their lazy seats and, you know, not watch Friends for the seventh time on Netflix, but actually get creating within your four walls if you can, and be prepared for the future that's around the corner. And thanks again, Alistair. Thank you everybody for watching. This is the second live day, as I mentioned, of our virtual show, the second and last one for now. But I think we've really enjoyed this, and we are planning to do more live streams like that in the very near future. Our virtual show, our replacement for the NAB 2020 that never happened, is an ongoing effort. So we are producing a lot of interviews, a lot of pre-recorded interviews with filmmakers, cinematographers around the world every day now. We're doing a lot of interviews with manufacturers about new products that were planned for NAB, but they are still coming out, probably not, you know, during the same days of NAB, which is right now. Some of them have been delayed, but we are aware of that, and we are producing constant new content. We're trying to put out one new video every day over the next couple of weeks as part of our virtual show, and we will probably do more of those live events in the very near future as well. So please stay tuned to Cinema5D. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't subscribed yet, and thank you very much for watching, and good luck. Stay safe, stay home, and remain healthy. Thank you.
B&H, the professional source for all your video needs. CVP, the leading specialist in creative cine, video, and photo solutions. Blackmagic Design, creating amazing solutions for film, post-production, and television. Atomos, better monitoring, better recording. Filmmakers, devoted to remarkable light. Fujifilm, value from innovation. Hollyland, for a better view. Manfrotto, imagine more. Nanlite, professional lighting solution. Sattler, set your ideas in motion. SERP, better films. And Tilted, arm your camera.